Rosalind Bellion, a wicked villainess who destroyed the world, and a beautiful temptress who survived by devouring her fiancé, a woman who severed all ties with her family, and the princess whom the Bellion family cast aside long ago. I heard those are all your titles. A villainess? A witch? What a joke! Right now I'm nothing more than a wretched, powerless death row convict. So, Princess Rosalind, when I graciously offered to marry you, you should have bowed your head and accepted it with gratitude. The assassination of the third prince, serial murder, fraud, public indecency, I was framed for every crime imaginable. Who are you? Are you Baron Gilbert? Rosalind looks up at her captor with quiet defiance, her single red eye and pale white hair framing her battered but beautiful face. I couldn't recognize a filthy pig who used to throw amorous glances at me. Enraged, the man snarls, "You bitch! I am Baron Robert. How dare a lowly prisoner mock me?" Losing his temper completely, Baron Robert draws his sword with a sharp screech, preparing to strike down the helpless princess. "Do you really have a death wish?" he screams, pointing his blade at her chest, while she calmly wonders inside her head, "Die? By whose hand?" "The crown prince holds my life in his hands. He will soon become the new emperor. Obsessed with the throne for so long, he won't let this chance slip away. He will drag me to the gallows for a public execution to put on a show, using me to appease the public and secure his crown. Will I be used until the very end and die for someone else? No way, I won't. If this insecure fool in front of me loses his temper and kills a high treason convict like me, he will take my place on the gallows. Baron Robert, unfortunately, you are not my type. I can't stand smelly, vulgar pigs. They make me sick." She smiles darkly, thinking to herself, "I will end this myself." "What? You stupid wench!" Robert snarls, his face twisting in raw rage. "You deserve to die," Robert roars, swinging his sword down with lethal force. Suddenly, a commanding voice cuts through the air. "That's enough," halting Robert's blade instantly. Rosalind looks up in surprise as the sudden intervention disrupts Baron Robert's deadly strike. With a sharp clang, the sword is forced out of Robert's hands and clatters onto the stone floor of the prison cell. "Ah, Ack, why are you here?" Robert stammers, clutching his injured wrist in terror as he looks at the newcomer. "Marquis Garin," Robert gasps as the powerful nobleman stands before him with a cold, imposing gaze. "Can you really not see through her act?" Marquis Garin asks calmly. "The princess is only using you to get herself killed. If you kill her, you will end up on the gallows in her place," Garin warns, as Rosalind tightly grips the blade with her bare, bleeding hand. "Well, do you still want to proceed?" Garin asks with glowing, menacing purple eyes. Terrified, Robert stammers, "No, of course not." "Eek!" Robert squeals, turning on his heel and running out of the prison cell in a panic. "What brings you here, Garin Wilbrid?" Rosalind asks, her face dark with cold anger. "Ah, good afternoon, Rosalind. Your beautiful face has become quite a mess since I last saw you." Garin greets her with an easy, mocking smile. "I'm not in the mood for pleasantries," Rosalind replies coldly, "especially not with the man who locked me up and keeps getting in my way. What is it? Did you come here to pity me or to mock me?" "Neither. I merely came to offer you an opportunity. The world is so dull and tedious, and all the fun things end far too quickly. So, to keep yourself entertained, did you play my guardian just to lower my guard, only to point a sword at me and drag me to prison yourself? Before I was dragged here after being labeled as a traitor through all kinds of false accusations, my life was nothing but exhausting. Garin was the one who helped me back then, providing me with a hideout and acting as my guardian. I had no choice but to trust him. That was why, when I realized he had planned to betray me from the very start, the shock was devastating." Garin then asks, "Do you believe in a parallel world, Rosalind?" A parallel world, a concept that countless worlds exist based on our choices. Depending on the choices, the exact same world could branch into multiple worlds. The man who proposed that theory was branded a heretic and burned at the stake, and his book was classified as a forbidden book. So why did you suddenly come all the way here to spout such nonsense? Garin chuckles. You only treat me so harshly. It hurts my feelings." Rosalind suddenly begins to cough up blood, collapsing to the floor as Garin watches her. She bitterly thinks, "I should have made a different choice back then." Garin gently tilts her chin up, murmuring, "It would be a waste to let you die under the cheap label of a villainess." "Don't you want to live, Rosalind, my adversary?" Garin asks, staring intently into her defiant red eyes. Suddenly, Rosalind violently coughs up a large splash of blood, shocking Garen as she collapses forward. Garen's eyes widen in alarm as he wonders in panic, "Oh no, when did he?" Garen realizes she must have poisoned herself. Was it what she did earlier? The wound definitely wasn't that serious. Rosalind smiles weakly, mocking him. "To think a man as meticulous as you didn't even notice. I must look pretty shocking right now. Actually, I took some medicine before you caught me. Hemocruoris. It's a poison that prevents wounds from clotting, causing nonstop bleeding. So there was something even you didn't know." Rosalind laughs softly as blood spills onto the stone floor, declaring with absolute triumph, "In the end, I win. Garen, I was lonely, so I think I was a little happy when I was with you. You asked if I wanted to live. My answer is..." Rosalind offers a radiant, peaceful smile, her white hair glowing as the last moments of her life fade away in a warm, golden light. Garen stands completely motionless, utterly stunned as he stares down at her final expression. Rosalind's body collapses onto the cold stone floor as her consciousness slips away into the light. She has stopped breathing, Garen realizes in disbelief as green magical particles disperse into the silent air. Garen stands over Rosalind's lifeless body as green magical particles swirl around them, murmuring in astonishment, "You always manage to surprise me." Garen looks down with a knowing, subtle smile and says, "See you soon, my villainess." As consciousness fades into darkness, Rosalind thinks to herself, "It's finally over. The exhausting running, the suffocating imprisonment." Expecting eternal rest, Rosalind thinks, "Now I can finally rest in peace without any distractions." But suddenly, muffled voices of onlookers break through the silence, whispering in panic, "Oh my goodness, what is going on? And did she really jump from here?" She wonders in frustration, "Why is it so noisy?" Rosalind's eyes snap open in shock. Confused and disoriented, she realizes, "Wait, noisy? That can't be. I definitely died." Rosalind sits up abruptly, gasping for breath, as a nearby maid and a noble woman in a red dress stare at her in utter disbelief, exclaiming, "Ha, my goodness!" Staring up at the glittering chandelier on the ornate ceiling, Rosalind hears the maid stammer in excitement, "My lady, the young lady has woken up." The noble woman looks down at Rosalind with deep annoyance, complaining, "Goodness, what kind of stunt is she pulling now? You caused trouble the very moment you wake up." Recognizing the voice, Rosalind clutches her face in sheer disbelief, thinking, "This voice, Lady Carmel? How is this woman standing in front of me?" Rosalind recalls her dark past with terror. "She was my father's second wife who ruined our family, and I killed her a long time ago." Looking down, Rosalind realizes in amazement, "Come to think of it, there isn't a single scar or scratch on my hands. The rest of my body and my eyes are perfectly fine too." Looking around the room, she continues to piece things together. "Besides, this is my room in the ducal house. Everything should have been destroyed." Just then, Carmel's voice cuts in sharply. "Rosalind, are you even listening to me?" Lady Carmel sighs dramatically, placing a hand on her chest as she grumbles, "I have never seen a child make such a dramatic scene. I am too embarrassed to show my face." As Carmel scolds her, asking, "Wasn't causing a scene with a suicide attempt enough for you?" Rosalind freezes, her red eyes widening as she thinks, "What?" Rosalind reflects on how different this is from her nature, thinking, "I would rather draw a sword and fight back. Something is off. They are clearly calling my name, but the Rosalind they are talking about doesn't seem to be me. Wait, a dead person is alive." She continues to analyze the situation. A place that should have been destroyed is intact, and people here remember me as a completely different person. Could it be? She then remembers Garen's haunting question. "Do you believe in parallel worlds, Rosalind?" Gritting her teeth in frustration, Rosalind thinks, "Garen, you bastard, parallel worlds really exist?" Carmel continues to nag. "Rosalind, are you listening? Are you ignoring me right now? I only say these things because I want what's best for you." Rosalind cuts her off coldly. "You are incredibly noisy. My head is already a mess and you're getting on my nerves." Carmel stammers in shock. What did you just say?" Rosalind looks up with a freezing glare, saying, excuse me? It's just that you're buzzing in my ear like a mosquito. If you want to keep nagging, would you mind going out of my room?" Lady Carmel is utterly stunned, stammering, "You?" as she realizes inwardly, something is wrong. Carmel tries to process the sudden change in the girl she knew. That timid Rosalind, who couldn't even speak properly, is suddenly acting so insolent? Why is she doing this? It's as if she has become a completely different person. Carmel snaps back, shouting, "How dare you be rude to me, your mother?" Well, Rosalind simply echoes back with cold skepticism. Mother? Noticing Carmel's lack of flashy jewelry, Rosalind deduces, given how narcissistic she is, seeing her wear minimal jewelry means she must be playing demure to secure the marriage. She then retorts aloud, "To be precise, you are my would-be stepmother. You haven't even had the wedding yet." Rosalind sits up and leans in close to Carmel, whispering menacingly, "Lady Carmel, I don't care whether you marry into this family or not, but could you please refrain from annoying me?" Rosalind smiles a terrifyingly sweet smile and whispers, "If you do me that favor, then I won't bother you even if you want to bring spies into this mansion, or sell our family's business secrets, or slowly poison my father to death." Carmel's eye trembles in utter horror as she thinks, How on earth? How does she know about my plan? Meanwhile, the loyal maid speaks up in defense, "My lady, you are going way too far. The future mistress is." Before the maid can finish her sentence, Rosalind reaches out and violently grabs her by the hair, causing the maid to scream out, "Ugh!" Pulling the maid down by her hair, Rosalind stares at her coldly and says, "She is not the mistress. She is Lady Carmel, and I am the princess of this house. Are you really in any position to lecture me?" The maid cries out in agony, "My head hurts. It hurts. Please let go." While Carmel yells in outrage, "Rosalind, what on earth do you think you're doing?" Ignoring Carmel, Rosalind forces the maid's face up, saying, "It seems this maid didn't understand what I just told Lady Carmel. When I said don't annoy me," Rosalind tightly squeezes the maid's jaw, silencing her instantly with a cold iron grip. Rosalind continues with a chilling tone, "It meant that no matter who it is, I will drag them straight down to hell." With a bright but sinister smile, Rosalind towers over the terrified maid who is pinned beneath her grasp on a bed of dark roses. Smiling serenely, Rosalind asks, "So would you please get out of my room immediately?" Leaning over the pinned maid, Rosalind reiterates darkly, "When I tell you not to bother me, it means, if you do bother me." Rosalind finishes her warning, "I will drag you straight down to hell." Terrified, the maid weeps and begs, "Please spare me. I was wrong, my lady." Rosalind smirks and commands, "Now take this foolish maid who takes after her mistress and get out of my room." Carmel stands frozen, unable to find her voice. Carmel's face turns grim as she mutters, "Rosalind, even if I try to understand that you're in shock from your suicide attempt, I won't let today's incident slide." Carmel turns on her heel and leaves, saying, "You'd better cool down in the meantime. Goodbye." The trembling maid desperately crawls after her, crying out, Lady Carmel, please take me with you." Left alone, Rosalind puts her hand on her hip and contemplates, "Now let's see if this is truly a parallel world. Time to gather some information." Examining her closet, Rosalind sighs, This is the only wearable dress, seeing how the rest are old and worn out." As she applies a bold red lipstick, she thinks bitterly, "This must be Lady Carmel's doing." Glaring at her own stunning reflection in the mirror, Rosalind declares to herself, "I'll tolerate her arrogance only until today." Looking at her reflection as a cute chibi, Rosalind sighs, "Anyway, I look so sickly no matter what." Sitting at her vanity table, Rosalind reflects, "Even more so than when I was 17 in my previous world. I'm not thrilled with how I look, but..." Walking gracefully down the grand sunlit corridor, Rosalind thinks, "Based on the information I've gathered over the last 3 days." Gazing out a massive window at the bright courtyard, she summarizes, "This is a parallel world roughly 10 years before my death, and I am currently 17 years old." Pondering the connection between the worlds, she muses, "The people from my original world exist here, and events unfold similarly, but there are slight differences in the details. For one, my situation in this world seems to be quite miserable. Despite being the only princess, all I have are shabby clothes and worn-out jewelry." Looking at her empty closet and hearing the maids whisper behind her back, "She's such a gloomy princess." And I know, right? It's ridiculous. Rosalind bitterly notes, "Unlike when everyone feared me for my tyrannical behavior, even the servants look down on me here. It's humiliating to be treated like this despite being a princess." Looking down at her shadow, Rosalind finds resolve. "Still, it's much better than being a fugitive like before. I'm sick of being hunted and pointed at. So the goal of my second life is..." Standing outside the dining room doors, Rosalind resolves to clean things up, starting with Lady Carmel, the woman destined to ruin the Bellian Duchy. The butler stammers in utter shock at her sudden appearance, gasping, "Lady Rosalind?" Rosalind asks with a cool, calm expression, "Why so surprised? I was invited to this family dinner too," leaving the servant stammering in response. As the servants struggle to recognize the once gloomy princess who has transformed overnight, Rosalind commands coldly, "Open the door." The grand dining room doors slowly creak open, revealing the family gathered inside mid-conversation. A sudden, heavy silence falls over the entire dining room as Rosalind gracefully steps inside. Rosalind calmly greets the room, saying, "It has been a while, everyone." Her grandfather, Duke Devon Bellion, and her red-haired uncle, Aegis Bellion, stare at her in disbelief. Lady Carmel gasps in disbelief at Rosalind's transformation. Meanwhile, Rosalind looks at Churdy Bellion, her biological father, remembering that in her previous world, everyone here had already died when the duchy fell 5 years ago. Staring at her family, Rosalind reflects on her dark past, thinking of how she never expected to see any of them alive again. Seeing them alive makes her feel a rare sense of warmth, prompting her to delay her planned departure from the estate to spend a few more days with them. Carmel immediately flies into a rage, shrieking, "Rosalind, how dare you wear such clothes to a dinner with your elders?" as she scolds her for wearing a dress that exposes her arms. Rosalind mockingly apologizes, asking, "What do you mean by acting like that?" while internally noting that Carmel's desperate attempts to assert control are completely in vain. Rosalind smiles sweetly and exposes Carmel's dark past aloud, mentioning how she killed her ex-husband to greedily take over as acting countess, leaving Carmel utterly speechless and terrified. With a radiant but sharp smile, Rosalind highlights the stark contrast between them, reminding Carmel of her lowly origins as a commoner's daughter who only became a noble through marriage. Rosalind silently vows to herself that as long as she is here, Carmel will never succeed in taking over the duchy. Carmel bursts into dramatic, fake tears, crying out to the Duke and Churdy, "Did you hear that? With Rosalind acting like this, how much harder do I have to try?" The Duke, Devon Bellion, silences her instantly, commanding in a cold, booming voice, "Be quiet and eat." As Carmel continues to snivel in the background, Rosalind eats elegantly, noting that her grandfather still possesses the exact same cold, villainous dignity from her past life. As Rosalind takes a bite of her food, the malicious maids in the background whisper and snicker mockingly behind her back. With a radiant smile, Rosalind looks up and says, "This is absolutely delicious." Rosalind holds out her fork and offers, "Mine tastes especially good. I'd love to share it," causing the surrounding maids to flinch in sudden terror. Rosalind asks, "Would anyone like a bite? How about you, eldest uncle? Father?" leaving Aegis surprised and her father, Churdy, silently staring. Breaking the tension, her uncle Aegis smiles warmly and stands up, saying, "Sure, since it's the first time my niece has ever asked me for anything." Carmel snaps in outrage at the lack of etiquette, but her words about her brother-in-law cause Aegis' warm expression to instantly vanish. Glaring down at Carmel with chilling hostility, Aegis coldly retorts, "I don't believe I'm your brother-in-law yet. An outsider has no right to meddle in my business." Aegis's terrifying glare instantly melts back into a bright, cheerful smile as he turns to Rosalind and asks, "Am I right, Rosalind?" Rosalind's sweat drops at the dizzying contrast, realizing that her uncle's extreme warmth toward his own family is almost terrifying. As Aegis leans in to eat from her fork, Rosalind notes that her uncle in this world is a truly fascinating person whose mood shifts in an instant. Although Aegis is casual and never received successor training, Rosalind remembers how he carried the heavy duties of the eldest son after the Duke and young Duke passed away. He was a man of incomparable responsibility who sacrificed everything for the family, yet the duchy still fell despite his efforts. Delighted by the taste, Aegis happily agrees, "You're right, this is delicious," and decides that his father and brother must try it as well. In a hilarious turn of events, Aegis forcefully stuffs the meat into Churdy's mouth before shoving a piece straight into the Duke's mouth to silence his complaints. A dark, menacing aura surrounds the Duke as he slowly bows his head in mounting fury, whispering, "To play such a filthy trick?" The Duke explodes in absolute rage, roaring, "Which of you wants to die?" while Rosalind calmly directs his anger toward the maids who had been snickering at her. The Duke coldly orders, "Get rid of them," as the weeping maids are violently dragged away, desperately begging Lady Carmel for help. The Duke growls about pathetic insects playing tricks at his table, forcing a trembling Carmel to apologize frantically, claiming the maids only acted out of loyalty to her. Rosalind slides a finger along her knife, slyly remarking, "Ah, so their impressive loyalty was taught by you, Lady Carmel, just like the Mock Roksha organization, which is famous for its loyalty." Carmel whips her head around in utter horror as the Duke repeats, "Makroksha? Do you mean that notorious criminal syndicate?" Rosalind explains that Macroxia is a notorious secret criminal syndicate where members use chess ranks as their code names and titles. In her past life, the syndicate kept a low profile initially, but grew rapidly after stealing the businesses of the Bellian Duchy. Their strategy involved infiltrating noble families with spies to leak internal secrets, engineers, and clients, ultimately ruining the household. Rosalind continues to explain that because these spies are raised from childhood, their loyalty to the syndicate is incredibly strong. Rosalind turns to Carmel and asks pointedly, "Isn't that right, Lady Carmel?" as the image of a giant white chess piece looms menacingly over the terrified woman. With a sweet but chilling smile, Rosalind points her knife directly at Carmel, cornering her completely. Rosalind presses further, asking once again, "Isn't that right, Lady Carmel?" while Carmel trembles under the weight of the accusation. Rosalind delivers the final blow, declaring, "If you need proof, just look at Lady Carmel's heel." Rosalind reveals that syndicate members brand themselves with a special ink that appears at a certain temperature, leaving Carmel in absolute panic over how she could know these secrets. Realizing she is cornered, a desperate Carmel sweats profusely and decides she must force her way out of the situation. Carmel grabs Trudy's arm in desperation, crying, "You don't believe her, do you, Trudy? All I ever did was love you." Trudy stares back at Carmel with wide, shocked eyes, completely frozen and speechless in the face of the revelation. Trudy advises the Duke that they should depart and that he will personally verify the matter, but Rosalind observes him clutching his chest and warns him that Lady Carmel has put him under hypnosis. Rosalind adds with a pleasant smile that when the Macrook Syndicate deploys a spy, they typically select someone highly proficient in hidden weapons and hypnosis. Trudy clutches his chest in sudden, shocked realization as Carmel stands beside him, frozen in terror. As the hypnotic spell begins to break, Trudy recalls the dark, repetitive command echoing in his mind to eliminate anyone who opposes Carmel, even if they are his own family. Struggling against the intense pain in his chest, Trudy realizes that the persistent voices directing his actions this entire time were part of Carmel's hypnosis. While Trudy grapples with the truth, a sweating Carmel realizes in a panic that she must eliminate Rosalind immediately before her entire plot is ruined. Carmel abruptly stands up and puts on a false smile, suggesting to Rosalind that they go to her room to resolve the misunderstanding calmly. Before Carmel can take another step, Rosalind smiles sharply and commands her to hold on. Rosalind asks the butler to check Lady Carmel's wrist, and the butler swiftly grabs Carmel's arm midair, catching her completely off guard. Carmel demands to be let go, but as her sleeve is pulled back, a long, sharp silver needle slips from her wrist and drops onto the floor. Whispers break out among the surrounding servants who suspect the fallen needle is a hidden poison weapon intended for the young lady. Realizing Rosalind was telling the absolute truth, Duke Devon Bellion scowls in disgust and sternly orders the guards to drag Carmel away immediately. Carmel screams frantically for Trudy and the Duke as she is seized by the guards, while Rosalind calmly bids her a cold, mocking farewell. Her gentle facade completely shattered, a furious Carmel glares at Rosalind and snarls, demanding to know if the princess is mocking her. Carmel shrieks in raw rage, calling Rosalind a half-dead wretch and swearing to kill her with her own hands, while Rosalind mockingly asks if she has given up on acting. Overcome with absolute hatred, Carmel violently breaks free from the guards and lunges forward to attack Rosalind. The butler swiftly pins Carmel down and commands the guards to cover her eyes and drag her out immediately. Holding her wine glass elegantly, Rosalind internally reflects on how she knew Carmel's secrets, remembering that in her past life, the Macrook Syndicate had actually tried to recruit her. She recalls with a smirk that the notorious syndicate had even invited her to become their supreme queen. With Carmel successfully removed from the estate, Rosalind resolves that it is now time to take care of her remaining business. Rosalind politely apologizes for causing a scene during dinner, but her uncle Aegis laughs heartily, praising her for doing something truly incredible. Appearing as a proud chibi, Aegis boasts that his intuition was entirely correct and that he had a bad feeling about Carmel from the very beginning. Rosalind expresses her gratitude for being able to help, but announces to the gathered family that she has something important to say. Rosalind delivers her sudden decision, calmly stating that she wishes to leave the mansion in the near future. Rosalind explains that since she has no personal funds, she would like to take a few pieces of jewelry with her, but her father Trudy abruptly interrupts her. Looking down with a somber, heavy expression, Trudy asks her why she is suddenly planning to leave the household. Rosalind is stunned by his question, wondering if her cold and distant father actually just initiated a conversation with her. Rosalind stares back at him in silent disbelief, completely surprised by his unexpected inquiry. Trudy sits quietly with a troubled expression, unable to meet her gaze directly as he awaits her explanation. Rosalind reflects on her distant relationship with him, noting that she can barely count on one hand the number of times they have actually spoken in either of her lives. Assuming his concern is merely practical, Rosalind smiles calmly and tells him that she understands what he is worried about. Rosalind reassures him that she will live quietly in another country to avoid bringing shame to the family, but Trudy raises his voice in frustration, asking why she would make such a reckless decision when her health is so frail. Clenching his fist in frustration, Trudy silently laments his daughter's deep-seated distrust of him. Rosalind reflects on how she was raised as a sickly, illegitimate child, feeling a quiet gratitude that the family simply chose not to abandon her. She remembers her past life, admitting that despite the lack of warmth between them, she always deeply regretted not attending her father's funeral. She recalls her lonely childhood spent confined to her bed, constantly hoping that her family would open the door and visit her like the happy families in books. Having grown tired of futile hope and constant disappointment, she resolves that she simply wants to go somewhere quiet where no one knows her and rest. Rosalind announces that before she leaves, she will fulfill her final duty to the Bellion family by personally talking to the Imperial family to annul her engagement to the third prince. As Rosalind promises to handle it quietly, Trudy slams his hands on the table in a rage, knocking his chair back and roaring for her to stop this nonsense. Trudy sternly refuses to allow the annulment, commanding her to return to her room, take her medicine, and go to sleep immediately. He angrily scolds her for making a fool out of everyone with her recent commotion, while Rosalind listens in cold, indifferent silence. Trudy clicks his tongue in sheer frustration at her lack of response and storms out of the dining room. Aegis rests his chin on his hands and sighs dramatically, remarking on how the fragile relationship between father and daughter is on the verge of breaking. Rosalind announces she will take her leave as well, but Aegis quickly tries to stop her, explaining that her father's harsh reaction did not stem from hatred. Aegis explains that Trudy is simply an awkward, dishonest man who lacks social skills, but Rosalind politely dismisses him, addressing him formally as young master. Aegis shivers in comedic distress, complaining that her sudden shift from calling him uncle to young master gives him goosebumps. Rosalind smiles playfully and admits she only called him uncle to irritate Carmel, before bidding him a pleasant goodbye and walking away. Aegis and the Duke are left sitting in stunned silence at the dining table as the butler brings in a wooden jewelry box. Aegis laughs heartily, thoroughly amused to discover this sharp, clever side to his niece, while the Duke grumbles in irritation. The Duke demands to know if this is a laughing matter, but Aegis playfully retorts that the Duke himself is the root cause of all these family communication issues. Aegis jokingly comments that his playful attitude is inherited entirely from his father, while the Duke looks thoroughly annoyed by his cigar and the summer heat. At the bottom, Chibi Chain is depicted as gloomy due to the Duke's poor parenting. Aegis reminds his father that he failed to listen when advised to expel Carmel, declaring him the one truly ruining the family, which makes the Duke shout in fury, "What did you say?" Aegis walks out of the dining room, asking the Duke to handle things properly instead of letting his only granddaughter leave, as the Duke bellows behind him that the boys should have acted like proper heirs and adults in the first place. Outside the room, Aegis stops in his tracks and internally reflects, realizing that though he said those harsh words, there was truth to them. Aegis sighs to himself, admitting that they had indeed been too indifferent to her, and reflects on how much has changed while he was away from the household. He resolves that he should try to help the pathetic Trudy out, even if it is a bit late. Meanwhile, in her room, a maid helps Princess Rosalind dress, calling her name politely. The maid happily brings a bouquet of roses, announcing that the young Duke sent some flowers and a card. A surprised Rosalind asks again, as she reaches out her gloved hand to take the envelope, which reads, "Just pick this up on the way." Rosalind holds the dark envelope and stares at it with her piercing red eyes, wondering what on earth has been going on since that fateful dinner. A high-angle view reveals Rosalind's bedroom overflowing with yellow and white flowers. She reflects in surprise that her room is almost completely full due to the flowers Trudy sends every single day. Several envelopes with flower stems are scattered on her desk, containing brief messages such as, "They were selling them cheap while I was there," "Just picked this up on the way," and "The language of flowers was nice." Rosalind stares at the cards in disbelief, wondering what is up with the strange, brief messages he always sends, and if they are meant to be some kind of warning. Looking at the envelope, Rosalind feels a quiet frustration, thinking that her father really does not need to send anymore and doesn't have to go this far. Rosalind sadly remembers her cold father, thinking that she already knows very well she is only worth as much to him as something he just happened to pick up on the way. Feeling suffocated by the heavy scent, Rosalind turns away and coldly instructs the maid to throw all the flowers away and to refuse any future deliveries as well. The butler enters the grand foyer and announces that the carriage is ready, and Rosalind, dressed in a stunning black gown, replies that she will leave right away. Watching her depart, the maids whisper among themselves, wondering if she is really going to the imperial palace dressed in black, which is typically reserved for funerals. Another maid explains that the princess ordered them to discard all the drab clothes Carmel gave her. The maid realizes with a sweat that black dresses are the only things the princess has left to wear now. A senior maid quickly hushes them, warning them not to gossip about the princess behind her back and reminding them of the butler's strict warnings to watch their mouths, especially after what happened to Lady Carmel. The maids agree in fear, noting that the princess knows everything and they will be in serious trouble if they aren't careful, as Rosalind walks elegantly with a sharp look, no longer the timid, gloomy girl she once was. An exterior view of the grand, white Gothic architecture of the imperial palace of the Dionysus Empire, standing under a bright blue sky. Walking through the opulent imperial hallway, Rosalind reflects on how strange it feels to return to the imperial castle on her own feet. Walking towards the prince's quarters, Rosalind wonders how long it has been since she last saw the third prince. The large double doors are pushed open, revealing the third prince sitting on a sofa reading a book. Recognizing his visitor, the young prince, Dionysus, quickly stands up with a blush on his face, calling out to her in pleasant surprise. Rosalind bows slightly and greets him formally, but Arma quickly gestures in a panic, telling her that she doesn't have to be so formal with him. Arma gently holds Rosalind's gloved hand with his white-gloved hand and warmly invites her to sit down. Rosalind sits elegantly on the sofa, and a blushing, overjoyed Arma says he is incredibly glad to hear from her. Rosalind shifts to a serious tone, stating that she has something crucial to discuss, and Arma eagerly tells her to go ahead. A quiet, tense silence falls over the room as the two sit opposite each other, preparing for the conversation. Sweating nervously, Arma asks if she wants to discuss this because he is too frustrating or if he did something wrong to offend her. Rosalind calmly replies that her decision is entirely her own and asks him to arrange a meeting with the Emperor so she can explain everything. Rosalind is suddenly caught off guard, gasping as her red eyes widen in shock. Arma drops to his knees in desperation, clasping both of her hands tightly and begging her not to go through with this. Tears well up in Arma's eyes as he pleads with her, saying he doesn't want to let her go and begging her to just tell him what she wants instead. Staring down at him, Rosalind reflects that she knew he was young and might get hurt, but since they barely had a connection at this point, she didn't expect him to object so vehemently. A dark memory flashes of a past timeline, reminding her of when she left the duchy and he secretly came to find her, only to end up lying in a pool of blood. Rosalind recalls a vision of Arma smiling happily with a bright companion in a field of flowers, thinking that he deserves someone like that, not someone like her who is always on edge and freezing cold. Rosalind resolves to steal her heart, thinking that even if she has to hurt him a little right now, she hopes he can eventually forgive her. Rosalind lets out a soft sigh and looks down at him coldly, telling him to stop acting so pathetic because it is only making her lose respect for him. She continues with a cold expression, stating that her taste is someone more promising with strong convictions and a fierce, masculine demeanor. She delivers the final blow, stating that those traits are the exact opposite of him and that she would appreciate it if he would let her go. Arma is left speechless, tears streaming down his face beneath his glasses as he whispers her name in despair. Rosalind stands up and turns to walk away, while a heartbroken Arma calls out for her to wait. Arma reaches out a trembling hand and gently grabs the fabric of her black dress to stop her. Looking down with a heavy heart, Arma agrees to arrange a meeting with his father, promising to do whatever she wishes. Rosalind looks back over her shoulder, thanking him even though she knows it must be difficult for him, while Arma quietly withdraws his hand. Arma looks down in self-loathing, thinking it is only because he is lacking, while Rosalind's reflection in a shattered black mirror thoughts reveal that it isn't because he's lacking or because she dislikes him. Rosalind fondly recalls a memory from her past life when she trusted no one, remembering how he was the only devoted, steadfast man who silently stayed by her side and brought her a blanket in the cold. With a sorrowful gaze, Rosalind silently reflects that for his own safety and sake, they must stay apart. Looking down with heavy eyes, Rosalind concludes that even if it brings pain right now, keeping this distance is the right choice for both of them. Rosalind tells the third prince she will take her leave now, but he urgently calls out for her to wait. Arma pleads with Rosalind, asking if it is truly impossible for them to remain friends, even if they break off their engagement. Rosalind dismisses his plea coldly, warning him that it would be best not to try unless he wishes to ruin her reputation. With a sharp look over her shoulder, Rosalind bids him farewell and turns to walk away. As the heavy double doors close, Arma desperately calls out her name once more. Arma runs down the grand hallway, begging Rosalind to wait and explaining that he didn't mean things the way they sounded. Rosalind and Arma are suddenly stopped in their tracks as a tall figure in a blue military uniform appears, making Rosalind internally curse her bad luck for running into the person she least wanted to see. The mockingly smiling man is revealed to be the second prince, Euldian Dionysus, who sneers that the two pathetic low-class people deserve each other in what he sarcastically calls the romance of the century. Arma stutters nervously in his brother's presence, while Euldian mockingly describes them as a prince who can't even crush an ant and a gloomy, stuttering princess. Euldian steps in close and mockingly holds Rosalind's chin, commenting on how alluring she has become since they last met. Arma quickly steps in to pull Euldian's hand away, warning his brother that his actions are highly disrespectful to Rosalind. Euldian reacts with sudden, terrifying fury, glaring at Arma with bloodshot eyes and mocking his sudden bravery. Euldian viciously attacks Arma, asking if he is seriously trying to defy his older brother just because his fiancée is watching. Euldian brutally kicks Arma to the ground, shouting that regardless of whether Rosalind is his fiancée, his word is absolute law. Euldian continues to violently stomp on Arma, warning him never to talk back again and to do exactly as he is told. Arma weakly speaks up through his injuries, stating that Rosalind does not belong to his brother, which prompts Euldian to strike him again. Arma shouts passionately that Rosalind is his, driving Euldian into an absolute rage. As Euldian continues his merciless beating, Arma desperately tells Rosalind to take this chance to run away. Watching the violent scene unfold in silence, Rosalind looks down at Arma, internally calling him a foolish man. Rosalind reflects on how Arma still cannot stand by and watch others suffer, before aloud commanding Euldian to stop. Euldian stops his punch midair, looking back in surprise as Rosalind stands right beside him. Arma looks up at Rosalind from the floor, blushing and offering a meek apology, followed by a quiet thank you. Rosalind walks past him, and when Arma asks if he did something wrong, she calmly replies that she simply thought of a much faster way to meet the Emperor. Rosalind turns around with a bright, beautiful, yet devious smile, leaving Arma completely dazed and blushing at her sudden change in demeanor. Standing up with newfound determination, Arma silently vows to make his brother regret ever touching what belongs to him. A sudden, powerful slap echoes through the hallway as Euldian's face is violently struck. As the nearby palace maids gasp in sheer shock, Euldian clutches his red cheek in disbelief, accusing Rosalind of committing an act of insult and attempted assassination against the imperial family. Standing calmly, Rosalind coldly states that Euldian shouldn't have touched her fiancé because it upsets her. As onlookers gather in gossip and confusion, Euldian yells that he is royalty, but Rosalind calmly points out that the third prince is royalty as well. Pointing accusingly at Arma, Euldian mockingly calls him a motherless half-breed and laughs bitterly as he realizes what she is doing. Euldian sneers that the rumors of Rosalind being trash must be true and that they deserve each other, while Rosalind reflects that Euldian still hasn't learned his lesson. Rosalind lands another swift slap across Euldian's other cheek, mockingly claiming her hand slipped and that she has a habit of striking whenever she hears nonsense. With a devious smile, Rosalind tells him she had no choice but to strike, comparing him to a rabid dog that keeps biting her fiancé. Completely humiliated and enraged, Euldian charges at Rosalind, screaming at her in fury. Rosalind prepares to take a blow to give the Emperor a plausible reason to punish Euldian, but a sudden impact sends Arma's glasses flying through the air. Rosalind's eyes widen in genuine shock as she realizes what just happened. Arma stands protectively in front of Rosalind, smiling gently at her despite the fresh bruise and blood dripping from his mouth. Rosalind stares at him in disbelief, internally questioning if he truly just took that violent blow for her sake. Arma groans in pain as Rosalind quickly steps in, offering a handkerchief to wipe his blood. Rosalind asks him why he had to interfere, to which Arma only responds with a weak, gentle laugh. While Euldian mockingly laughs at their dramatic display, a stern imperial butler arrives to announce he brings a message from His Majesty the Emperor. Euldian demands to hear the message, confident that Rosalind will be severely punished for her insolence. To Euldian's utter shock, the butler announces that the Emperor has ordered the second prince to remain under immediate house arrest until further notice. Yuldian reacts in furious denial, pointing at them and shouting that he is clearly the victim of an attempted assassination and demanding the butler ask the emperor again. The butler politely bows and promises to convey his words, but insists Yuldian obey the command for now, leaving the second prince cursing the emperor's idea of justice. Stomping his boots in rage, Yuldian grumbles that everyone knows the emperor only dotes on his older brother in Arma. Yuldian storms out of the hallway, angrily screaming at the onlookers to stop staring at him. As Yuldian throws his childish tantrum in the distance, the butler informs them that the emperor has commanded an immediate audience. Arma assumes the summons is for him and asks if he should go right away, but the butler quickly clarifies that the emperor did not summon the third prince. The butler reveals that the emperor has summoned Lady Bellion, prompting Rosalind to internally note that sacrificing a bit of soreness in her hand was a highly successful outcome. With a confident smile, Rosalind agrees to meet His Majesty and politely asks the butler to lead the way. The butler's narration reveals that the person His Majesty summoned is actually not the third prince, but Rosalind herself. Calling her forward, the butler addresses Lady Bellion, while Rosalind reflects that, despite some minor pain in her hand and ears, this is a very successful outcome. Rosalind smiles brilliantly with her striking red eyes, ready to face the Emperor of the Empire. An adorable chibi Arma eagerly offers to accompany Rosalind, but she gently declines, telling him he should see a doctor first, as it would be embarrassing for her fiancé to be seen in such a state. The butler politely guides Rosalind forward while a blushing Arma stands in a daze, watching them leave. Arma clutches his blushing cheek in absolute awe, left completely speechless by Rosalind's sudden change in demeanor. Following the butler, Rosalind walks down the Grand Palace hallway with poise and confidence. Entering the luxurious study, the butler announces the arrival of Lady Rosalind to the Emperor. The Emperor greets her warmly, asking if she has been well since their last meeting. Seated comfortably on his sofa, the Emperor, Severus Jin Dionytus, observes that Rosalind seems quite different today. Rosalind offers a graceful greeting, thanking him for his grace, to which the Emperor laughs heartily at her flattering words after the dramatic scene she just caused. Tapping his fingers thoughtfully on the table, the Emperor questions what a lady who usually prioritizes safety was thinking to cause such a massive commotion. With a sharp, intense look in her eyes, Rosalind requests a private conversation to discuss a highly important matter. The Emperor wonders what kind of sensitive matter could possibly require such absolute privacy. Placing her hand over her heart, Rosalind boldly declares her wish to break off her engagement with the third prince. Although surprised, the Emperor remains calm and asks her to take a seat, commanding the butler to bring tea and leave them in private. Once the doors close and they are alone, the Emperor asks Rosalind to speak freely about her reasons for wanting an annulment. Rosalind promises that if he grants the annulment, she will resolve two of the Emperor's biggest current headaches. Rosalind points out the two major crises, the difficult negotiations with Kaluta on the northern border and the mysterious disappearance cases occurring throughout the Empire. Surprised by her knowledge, the Emperor narrows his eyes, suspecting a massive information leak within his own palace. Recognizing the gamble, Rosalind relies on memories of major events from her past life while claiming to the Emperor that she simply awakened her supernatural power during her recent incident. The Emperor is intrigued, realizing she is referring to the rare, mysterious power known as the Abyss. A dark illustration explains that the Abyss is an unknown power that awakens under extreme situations, making her recent suicide attempt the perfect cover story. The Emperor cheerfully claps his hands and offers his congratulations on her wonderful awakening. Rosalind's cute chibi note reveals the Emperor is the first to know, making him laugh and tease that her father and brother will be highly disappointed. Sipping her tea, Rosalind listens as the Emperor inquires what kind of special ability she possesses to solve problems that even he cannot. Rosalind calmly states that it is not a matter of the Emperor being unable to solve them, but rather his desire to resolve them quietly and amicably. Rosalind drops a massive bombshell, revealing she knows about the secret, massive purge the Emperor is currently preparing. The Emperor's playful demeanor vanishes, replaced by a cold, intimidating glare as Rosalind realizes she has successfully drawn out his true face. Narration explains the Emperor's nickname is the Clown Emperor because of his constant smiling, but in a year, he will unleash a terrifying purge. Rosalind reflects on how the upcoming purge will decimate the nobility, and she boldly points out that the House of Belion is already on his target list. Rosalind presumptuously asks the Emperor to spare the direct line of the Belion family, but the Emperor questions why he should agree to such a losing deal. Rosalind confidently argues that her proposal is highly beneficial and that her uncle's usefulness can be exploited. Rosalind adds that their engagement was merely a political show of solidarity between the imperial family and the duchy. She reassures the emperor that even without a marriage alliance, the Bellian duchy would never betray the imperial family. Pleased by her political acumen, the emperor smiles and agrees to grant her request if she successfully resolves the two crises to his satisfaction. The emperor teases that he is still disappointed, calling his son a handsome son of Aphrodite, but Rosalind humbly replies that Arma is far too good for her. Rosalind requests that their conversation and her newly awakened ability remain an absolute secret, which the emperor readily accepts. The emperor offers to have the second prince apologize for his earlier violence, but Rosalind politely declines any apologies or rewards. Instead, Rosalind asks the emperor to grant her one final request. Yellow rose petals drift through the air, highlighting the peaceful yet tense atmosphere. Leaving the study, the grand double doors shut behind Rosalind as she lets out a heavy, relieved sigh. Arma suddenly appears in the hallway and asks if her conversation with his father went well, catching Rosalind off guard. A startled chibi Rosalind wonders how Arma managed to approach her so quietly without making a single sound. Smiling brightly with a bandage on his cheek, Arma explains that his father was looking for him. Arma leans in with a sweet smile, asking if his properly treated wound now makes him a fiancé she won't be ashamed of. Blushing intensely, Arma playfully asks Rosalind if she wants to personally check if his bandage is applied correctly. With a dramatic flourish, Rosalind sighs and raises her black-gloved hand, agreeing to his request. Rosalind gently cups Arma's cheek with her gloved hand, sending the young prince into a state of absolute blushing bliss. Looking directly into the camera with her striking red eyes, Rosalind tells the third prince that he no longer needs to stand in front of her to protect her, revealing that she had let herself get hit on purpose earlier. Arma is shocked and asks why she would do such a thing, to which Rosalind calmly explains that accusing her of insulting the imperial family or attempted assassination would not have been an exaggeration. Although Arma insists she was only trying to protect him, Rosalind firmly tells him that even if she ends up in a difficult situation, there is nothing he can do about it anyway. Rosalind looks back over her shoulder, cold and resolute as she tells Arma that there is no need for him to step in for her sake. Saying her farewell, Rosalind turns to leave while Arma stands in place, looking down as he apologizes for being unable to escort her out in his current state. Rosalind bids him farewell and hopes to see him again, to which he quietly responds with a soft yes. Rosalind walks away, her high heels clicking against the floor, as Arma silently reflects that it is due to his own stubbornness that she cannot even step outside. With a quiet click, the massive doors shut behind Rosalind, leaving Arma alone in the grand hallway. Clad in her elegant black gown and wide-brimmed hat, Rosalind gracefully walks down the palace corridor. Garen Wilbrid stops Rosalind in her tracks, leaning on his cane as he asks where she is going in such a hurry. Spotting him, Rosalind smiles deviously, thinking to herself that he is finally here and that she has been waiting for him. Standing proudly before her with a gentle smile is Garen Wilbrid, clutching his uniquely crafted cane. Meanwhile, back in the study, Arma bows politely to his father, the emperor, asking if he has been in good health. The emperor scoffs, noting that his children only visit when they need something, while Arma nervously apologizes and promises to visit more often. The emperor playfully rolls his eyes, telling Arma he doesn't mean a single word of that. Suddenly, the emperor's eyes narrow into a cold, sharp glare as he reveals he has dismissed everyone nearby, telling Arma he can stop his boring act now. Caught off guard, a chibi Arma acts surprised, stuttering in confusion. Dropping his pretend act, Arma smiles softly and blushes slightly, showing his true, gentle demeanor. The emperor sighs dramatically, commenting that both Arma and his fiancée are exactly the same. The emperor leans back and addresses his youngest child directly. Standing before his father, Arma is asked what brings him to the study when he was never summoned. Clutching the curtain tightly, Arma resolutely states that there is something he needs to ask. Arma addresses his father, who stares back with an intense, expectant look. Arma brushes his hair back as a dark, powerful energy swirls around him, and he demands to know what his father discussed with Rosalind. Illuminated by a vibrant green light, a serious and intense Arma asks his father what kind of conversation took place with the princess. Arma calmly pours a fresh cup of tea as blue petals gently drift around him. Moving with poise, Arma sits down on the luxurious blue sofa opposite his father. Setting the teapot down, Arma firmly requests his father to tell him everything. Placing his hand near the teacup, Arma asks again what his father and the princess discussed in private. The emperor shrugs dismissively, claiming he merely told her not to cross the line and instructed her to attend the imperial banquet, before adding that she wants to break off her engagement. When the emperor mentions he agreed to the annulment, Arma pauses mid-sip, a drop of tea or blood dripping from his lips in surprise. Arma demands to know why, to which his father replies that the princess offered to solve his problems in exchange for a deal. An illustration of a balance scale appears, with Rosalind weighing heavier than Arma as the emperor explains she simply had more to offer than Arma does right now. With an intense look, Arma asks what her proposal was. Taking a sip of his tea, the emperor replies that he promised Rosalind he wouldn't tell. Arma points out that since his father drank the tea Arma brewed, he must tell him, prompting a cute chibi argument where the emperor calls him petty and Arma retorts that his father was petty first. The emperor reveals the princess promised to handle the negotiations with Kaluta and investigate the disappearance cases, leaving Arma in awe of how much she has changed from her previously timid self. As hot steam rises from the teacup, the emperor notes that she felt different than usual, but as long as it doesn't harm them, it doesn't matter. The emperor smiles as he explains his plan to send Lady Bellion with a delegation to Kaluta next month. Arma immediately declares that he will go along as well. The emperor warns Arma that getting involved means bearing the responsibility, but Arma coldly replies that he has little interest in the imperial throne. The emperor remarks that a man without ambition lacks charm, while Arma's reflection shimmers in the red tea. The emperor breaks the news that Arma cannot go anyway because the princess has already chosen the person she wants to accompany her. To Arma's absolute shock, his father reveals that Yuldian will be going with the delegation instead of him. Title cover card for Chapter 6 of The Rogue Villainess has returned, featuring roses, candles, and a crow in a decorative mirror. Rosalind goes on a massive shopping spree at a luxury jewelry boutique, casually declaring she will take everything in the display case. Rosalind continues her shopping spree, pointing out a display of expensive designer bags and shoes, and purchasing all of them as well. Moving to the clothing section, Rosalind orders the entire collection of outfits on display to be purchased. Surrounded by a mountain of pink gift boxes, the shopkeeper cries tears of joy, praising the incredibly generous Bellion princess for being nothing like the rumors. Looking stunning and confident, Rosalind orders the red dress and the matching hat, while the shopkeeper wonders who could have possibly started the rumor that she was timid and stuttered. And even though she seems to be choosing carelessly, she is pointing out only the finest items in the boutique. Rosalind stands elegantly inside Pluier Boutique as the shop staff eagerly present various exquisite dresses and accessories. Observing her impeccable selections, Marquise Garin Wilbrid reflects that despite her usual plain attire, she possesses surprisingly exquisite and flawless taste. Looking at the massive pile of purchases being loaded, Garin Wilbrid wonders in astonishment if she is truly planning to buy everything in the store, as Rosalind stands proudly beside the boutique owner. As Garin sits comfortably holding his cane, onlookers whisper in shock about his presence alongside Rosalind. They wonder about the nature of their relationship, noting his fame for business acumen, and acknowledge Pluier Boutique as the most exclusive establishment in the entire empire. Pluier Boutique, known for operating strictly by reservation and only moving for royalty, opens its doors completely to someone who is buying enough to empty the entire store. Standing beside Baron Pluier, Rosalind turns to him and asks if there is any problem. Baron Pluier warmly reassures Rosalind to shop to her heart's content and suggests that if the shopping has improved her mood, they should head to his estate to discuss and share details of their plans. A close-up captures Rosalind's striking, sharp red eyes filled with cold determination and intelligence. Rosalind politely agrees to the invitation and confirms the boutique owner's identity, asking, "I would appreciate that. You are Baron Pluier, correct?" Glancing at the sparkling garments and dresses on display, Rosalind compliments the boutique, noting that all the items they sell are of exceptional design and quality. Baron Pluier proudly promises never to disappoint her, prompting Rosalind to express her trust and order all her purchased items to be sent directly to the Bellion Duchy. The boutique owner turns in shock as Marquis Wilbrid reacts with a curious murmur of, regarding the payment of the enormous bill. Garin Wilbrid casually signs a check and hands it over, telling the owner that the bank will cash it for him, leaving Baron Pluier completely stunned to realize he is holding a legendary blank check. Staring at the check in disbelief, a chibi Baron Pluier nervously notes that although the massive total came to 823.8 million oolong, the amount Garin wrote is even higher. A close-up of the elegant check shows Garin Wilbrid's signature and the staggering written amount of exactly 1 billion oolong. Bowing deeply with his hand over his heart, the boutique owner gratefully promises that they will personally visit whenever Garin or Rosalind require their services. Garin and Rosalind prepare to leave the boutique as the owner and staff bow respectfully, expressing their deepest gratitude for the generous patronage. As they walk out, Rosalind glances back over her shoulder and offers the boutique owner a final word, telling him to consider it a bit of friendly advice to take her leave. Turning around, Rosalind advises the startled Baron Powe to change his suppliers because of some nasty rumors spreading from the south, leaving him completely bewildered and asking for clarification. The heavy doors of the boutique slam shut with a firm click, leaving the confused owner shouting from inside to ask what the young lady could possibly mean by her warning. Helping Rosalind into the carriage, Garen takes her hand with a gentle smile and playfully asks if she has decided to become a righteous and kind person in this lifetime. Rosalind steps into the golden carriage, explaining that since he paid such a massive advance, it would be a shame for a fine place to close down in a year due to a drug scandal that wouldn't even be the owner's fault. Looking back with a captivating smile, Rosalind finishes Garen's sentence about her being kind, her eyes shining with amusement under her large hat. A dark memory flashes back, showing Rosalind kneeling inside a tattered prison cell in her past life, as Garen stands outside the iron bars, looking down at her with cold purple eyes. Another grim memory reveals a tattered Rosalind gripping a heavy sword, standing victoriously over a defeated Garen on the ground, coldly telling him that she hasn't killed him yet. The dark, chilling memory fades as Rosalind's crimson eye glints from the shadows, reflecting that although she can see right through Garen, there are still mysteries surrounding him. Reflecting on her past, Rosalind reminds Garen that a truly kind person isn't capable of murder, warning him that the righteous and kind are actually the ones to fear most, because once their sense of justice shatters, they will not hesitate to draw their swords. Garen smiles and nods in agreement, admitting there is nothing more dangerous than unyielding justice and obsessive kindness, before inviting her to continue their conversation inside the carriage. As the elegant carriage travels down the sunlit city streets, Garen asks Rosalind how it felt to die, to which she calmly replies that it was a profound relief. Sitting opposite Garen inside the carriage, Rosalind admits she is highly displeased because just when she thought she was finally free from living, he threw her into this bizarre new world. Amidst a dark background of blue roses and thorns, Garen reflects on how they ended up in a parallel world remarkably similar to their own, though he agrees that finding a fragile, stuttering Rosalind here is indeed bizarre, since there is no one more eloquent than her. Looking out the window, Rosalind explains that she has done some extensive research since arriving, realizing she needed to fully understand this world first before using any information from their original timeline. Rosalind places her gloved hand against the carriage window, noting that while the two worlds are very similar, her investigation into Garen's identity left her with a few lingering questions. Reflecting on their past, Rosalind points out the window that despite Garen's claim of not wanting her to die as a villainess, they were never on friendly terms, unless one counts their mutual desire to drive a blade into each other's necks. Garen's purple eyes glow sharply as Rosalind deduces that he must have had a very clear and specific purpose for crossing over to this parallel world. An elegant blue frame highlights the realization that Rosalind has finally discovered the single biggest difference between their original world and this one. A vision of Garen's mother, the Villainess, sleeping peacefully surrounded by white flowers appears as Rosalind reveals that in this world, Garen's mother is still alive. Rosalind looks directly at Garen and asks if the relationship he truly wanted to change in this lifetime was actually the one with his mother. Rosalind's red eyes focus sharply as she questions what happened to the original souls of the bodies they are currently occupying. A peaceful daisy field with a headstone appears as Garen reassures her that the parallel world transfer only occurs when the host bodies are already deceased but physically intact. Garen looks away slightly, softly adding that he has never once actually thought about driving a blade into her neck. Cold and unmoved, Rosalind tells him to cut the nonsense, stating she already knows the original Rosalind of this world tried to take her own life. Garen smiles and steers the conversation back to her, questioning how she managed to cross over to a parallel world with a deceased body when her abyss ability was merely a tracking skill. Rosalind sits back in her seat, calmly challenging him to share his own theory since she is certain he has already come up with one. A chibi Rosalind flatly refuses to answer, leaving a sweating Garen to jokingly lament how cold she is after he just let her squeeze 1 billion oolong out of him. Rosalind replies that 1 billion is a small price to pay for bringing back someone who wished to die, while Garen smiles and coaxes her to indulge him with her theory to keep them entertained. Glancing back with a knowing smirk, Rosalind relents and agrees to share her theory regarding his secret. Rosalind leans in close and delivers a shocking question, asking Garen if he made a contract with the devil. A creepy, shadowy mouth with sharp fangs grins wickedly, hinting at a dark and supernatural secret. Resting his chin on his hand with a sinister, fanged smile, Garen asks her what she thinks, wondering to himself if she is finally starting to show her true colors. Stunned by her sudden deduction, Garin looks on in silence as Rosalind asks him once more if he made a contract with the devil. Crimson-eyed Rosalind stares coldly as a strange, glowing green flame erupts from her hand. Rosalind recalls seeing a green flame before she died, noting that it is the symbol of a devil capable of dimensional travel, explaining how a parallel world could be created and a deceased host body inhabited, which tracking abilities alone could never achieve. Rosalind suspects that Garin is not a naturally awakened abyss, but rather borrowed power from a transcendent being, though Garin scoffingly asks how she can be so certain based on a mere guess when she has witnessed his power firsthand. Looking at him calmly, Rosalind points out that whether he possesses the power or not is irrelevant. What truly matters is its source. As Rosalind demands to know the truth, Garin looks down in silence before his lips slowly curl into a chilling, wide grin revealing sharp, fanged teeth. Resting his hand near his face, Garin sports a dark, menacing smile and asks Rosalind what she thinks of his secret. Scandalous newspaper articles begin circulating across the empire, flashing sensational headlines about a massive shipment of dresses and a rumored dangerous affair between Garin Wilbred and the princess. The anxious boutique staff bow deeply, frantically apologizing and assuring Rosalind that they would never leak gossip, but she calmly reassures them that she doesn't suspect their boutique at all. Holding the newspaper, Rosalind notes that loose lips are everywhere, admitting she fully expected a scandal the moment she chose to go out with Garin. Rosalind gently dismisses the weeping boutique representatives, letting them know that she has received more than enough apologies from them. Rosalind quietly sighs, reflecting that her playful attempt to get back at Garin got a bit out of hand, and wonders how shocked Prince Arma must be upon reading the scandalous news. Closing her eyes, Rosalind realizes this turn of events is actually for the best, as the massive scandal will serve as the perfect excuse to break off her engagement. She walks gracefully, noting that the one truly troubled by this scandal is Garin, who will undoubtedly scramble to quiet the rumors himself as he tries to reconcile with the Marchioness. Knowing her family is completely in the dark, Rosalind opens the heavy double doors of the dining hall, determined to explain the situation and clear up any misunderstandings. Rosalind enters the grand dining room and announces her return to her assembled family gathered around the banquet table. Suddenly, a hand slams violently onto the table as a furious voice objects, demanding to know what she could possibly lack to go chasing after a married man. The white-haired second son of the Bellion Duchy, Ian Belliona, known scoundrel infamous for his constant troublemaking, smirks and holds up a glass of wine, mockingly commenting on her playing with fire. Rosalind glances at Ian, recalling that although he was a prime target of the Imperial Purge in her past life, the Emperor kept him alive in this timeline as promised. She reflects that even if fate tries to repeat her tragic past life, her success in driving out Carmel ensures the Bellion Duchy won't fall, and her brother will be spared from a grim death. Looming over Rosalind, her furious father demands to know why she isn't answering him, prompting her to calmly start explaining that her relationship with Garin isn't what it seems. The Duke is visibly shocked that she referred to the Marquis by his first name, causing Rosalind to quickly correct herself and state they merely met and became acquaintances. Standing tall, the Duke warns her that Garin is an entirely unreadable and dangerous man, questioning what on earth she was thinking by associating with him. Rosalind is deeply confused by her father's sudden concern, wondering why he is suddenly so invested when he was always so cold, and if he simply fears she has brought shame upon their family name. Rosalind coldly assures him that she has no intention of damaging the family's prestige and has not forgotten her place, which leaves her father completely bewildered. Looking away indifferently, Rosalind tells him that since he never cared about her anyway, the flowers and letters he has suddenly been sending lately are nothing but a burden. A painful memory flashes back of a young Rosalind desperately wishing her father would embrace her, only to be met with a look of pure disgust that forced her to accept her harsh reality as an illegitimate child. She bitterly reflects that whether in her original life or this parallel world, her father has never loved her, and she has long since severed any remaining emotional ties to him. Rosalind thanks him dryly for raising a blood relative he has no affection for, promising she won't bring any trouble to his household, leaving her father stuttering in despair. Shifting her attention, Rosalind notes that since even her scoundrel uncle is present and the entire family is gathered in one place, it is the perfect moment. Standing tall and elegant amidst a backdrop of white flowers, Rosalind calmly prepares to deliver a major announcement to her family. The entire table freezes in absolute shock as Rosalind flatly declares that she is going to break off her engagement with the third prince. Leaning forward, the Duke intensely questions if the Emperor actually agreed to such a thing, knowing him to be a terrifying, calculated man who would wait in the shadows for over a decade just to strike. Rosalind calmly confirms that the Emperor did agree, explaining that there is no way he would have let her break off such a crucial political alliance unless she made a significant promise to His Majesty. She reveals the terms of her deal, securing the negotiations with Kaluta and solving the mysterious disappearance cases plaguing the capital in exchange for the Emperor's permission to end the engagement. Rosalind casually adds that she will be departing for Kaluta very soon, leaving her family once again completely dumbfounded. She explains that Marquis Garin will be accompanying her to Kaluta as her escort to solve the disappearance case, and clarifies that the dresses from Pluyer Boutique were simply demanded as compensation for his past rudeness at the banquet. Rosalind casually mentions that her closet was empty anyway, so the compensation worked out perfectly, prompting her uncle to ask in bewilderment what she could possibly mean by that. When Rosalind reveals that Lady Carmel either stole or destroyed all her clothes and jewelry, her father and uncle react with sheer fury at the extent of the woman's cruelty. Rosalind calmly tells them there is no need to be angry as it was her own fault for keeping quiet, privately reflecting that the original Rosalind likely stayed silent as a quiet form of rebellion in a house where she had no allies. She recalls how speaking up would have only exposed her vulnerability in the past, but resolves that she is different now, having already died once, and is determined to live with absolutely no regrets. Rubbing his temples, her uncle sighs and asks why she speaks as if she is talking about someone else, before concluding that everything has at least been resolved. Standing up from her chair, Rosalind flatly announces that she has said all she needed to say. Her devastated father desperately calls out for her to wait, silently agonizing over whether she truly intends to cut ties and never see him again. Reaching his hand toward her, her father silently laments that he always wanted to be close to his daughter Rosalind, but everyone he ever loved slipped away like sand through his fingers. Born as an abyss with the catastrophic power of poison, he tragically took his mother's life at birth and later ended up killing his beloved wife. Fearing his deadly poison would reach Rosalind, he forced himself to keep his distance, but his tragic failure to protect her allowed Carmel to step in and crush her spirit entirely. Sinking deep into a pitch-black abyss, the father reaches his hand out toward his distant daughter, despairing that she is the only thing he has left. Large droplets of dark purple poison drip down as he desperately vows that he cannot let her leave him like this as well. Clutching his head in pure agony as dark, toxic fumes erupt around him, the Duke desperately begs for it to stop. As the dark poison consumes him, he repeats his desperate plea not to let her leave, leaving Rosalind to look back in shock and utter confusion. Rosalind stares in wide-eyed shock as dark, toxic purple fumes begin to billow through the room, signaling her father's loss of control. Looking at her coughing servants and the poisonous purple liquid spreading across the floor, Rosalind realizes this is her father's supernatural poison power, wondering what could have suddenly triggered it. Stuttering as his hand drips with toxic residue, the Duke stumbles and collapses heavily onto the floor directly into his own pool of deadly poison. As toxic fumes continue to engulf him, the Duke silently agonizes over his power leaking out without his knowledge, deeply ashamed that Rosalind has to witness him in such a pathetic state. He desperately tells himself that this is for the best, as her witnessing this terror will make her hate and avoid him, ensuring she stays far away and remains safe. Spotting her walking toward the danger, her uncle frantically yells for her to stop, while Ian shouts in disbelief, asking if she has completely lost her mind. Rosalind coldly demands that they let go of her, but Ian grabs her wrist, warning her that she could die if she approaches him, and promising to call an abyss user to handle the situation. Rosalind scoffs, asking if they simply plan to lock him up and wait for him to calm down again, declaring that running away from the problem every single time is exactly why it was never solved. Ignoring their desperate warnings, Rosalind walks gracefully over the shattered banquet table and steps directly into the pool of toxic purple poison, leaving her father to call out her name in absolute horror. Standing right before her father, Rosalind calmly tells him to relax and listen to her, warning him that if he fails to control his power, she will die, leaving him completely paralyzed with fear. She reflects that in her past life, they never got along, so she never paid attention. But thinking about it now, it makes absolutely no sense for someone who controls poison to die of poisoning. Looking down at her kneeling, suffering father, Rosalind realizes there must have been a deeper, more tragic reason behind his demise in her past life. Rosalind looks calmly at him and asks him a pointed question. If someone who is completely immune to all poisons were to die of poison, why does he think that would be? Stunned and speechless, her father looks up at her with trembling, wide, crimson eyes, stuttering in confusion. Clenching his fist in the purple puddle, her father is completely bewildered by her words, unable to understand her true intentions as he tries to process her cryptic question. Rosalind delivers the cold truth, explaining that such a death would occur simply because their body had given up on detoxification. Taking a deep breath, Rosalind prepares to address the profound despair her father has carried in silence for so long. She silently reflects on her past life, realizing that her father had simply given up on living, finding the curse of surviving alone after losing everyone he loved to be far too much to bear. Looking at her startled father, Rosalind softly admits that she always believed he hated her and that she was completely worthless in his eyes. Welling up with tears, her devastated father desperately chokes out that her assumption is absolutely not true. As her father tries to explain how much he truly cared, Rosalind privately decides that now is the perfect moment, swiftly pulling out a small glass vial and popping the cork. With a swift, firm movement, Rosalind grabs her father by the chin and forces his mouth open. She quickly pours the glowing blue liquid from the vial directly down his throat before he has a chance to resist. Choking and coughing on the sudden fluid, her father desperately asks what she just forced him to swallow, only to be met with her silent, unwavering gaze. As her father collapses softly onto the floor, Rosalind looks at the empty vial, knowing she just administered a highly potent sedative designed specifically for Abyss users. Rosalind notes that this legendary Abyss sedative is called Dreamer, a miraculous medicine that her father is destined to develop several years into the future. She recalls that in her past life, Carmel smuggled the formula out and the Macroxia weaponized it. But since Dreamer doesn't exist yet in this timeline, she brewed it in advance using her memories. Looking at her father sleeping peacefully on the floor as the purple poison slowly dissipates, Rosalind is satisfied to see that the sedative is highly effective. Turning to the anxious staff, Rosalind calmly orders them to clean up the dining hall and move her sleeping father to his bedroom. Walking away with clicking heels, Rosalind leaves the bowing servants as they frantically reply with absolute obedience. As the maids gently help her change her shoes, Rosalind is relieved she prepared the medicine in advance, noting to herself that her feet had almost melted from the toxic poison. Feeling a sudden, heavy gaze lingering on her, Rosalind shifts her eyes with curiosity. She turns to find her grandfather, uncle, and Ian staring at her in absolute awe, prompting her to sheepishly realize she had completely forgotten they were still in the room. Breaking the silence, Rosalind casually advises them that the No Long mine will soon be up for auction, and that it would be wise to buy it, leaving her uncle completely bewildered. She casually explains that Marquise Guerin is also eyeing the mine and will likely bid around $1 billion, so a bid of $2.5 billion should easily secure it. Ian bursts into mocking laughter, asking if she has completely lost her mind for wanting them to pay $2.5 billion for a mine that produces nothing but cheap amber. Resting her chin on her hand, Rosalind indifferently remarks that buying it now is actually getting it dirt cheap, though whether they choose to purchase it is entirely up to them. Her grandfather folds his arms and quietly calls out her name, which prompts Rosalind to respond with cold, polite respect. Her grandfather laments that his only granddaughter is so cold to him, pointing out that his friends' granddaughters act cute and happily go shopping with their grandfathers. Rosalind flatly replies that those girls are simply putting on a show to waste their grandfather's fortunes, asking him if he truly wants her to behave in such a shallow way. Taken aback by her sharp and logical response, her grandfather breaks into a nervous sweat, completely speechless. Looking at her with genuine warmth, her grandfather softly tells her that if she is ever going through a hard time, she shouldn't bear it alone and should ask him for help. Looking away, Rosalind quietly reflects that complaining about one's struggles only serves to make both people miserable. Rosalind coldly states that, as he can see, she is fully capable of handling things on her own, leaving her grandfather to sigh and lament his lack of luck with affectionate grandchildren. Curtsying gracefully, Rosalind announces that once she is ready to depart for Kaluta, she will be staying at Marquise Guerin's villa due to their extensive upcoming collaboration. Ian steps forward in a panic, warning her that Kaluta is a terrifying place filled with man-eating savages who will eat someone like her alive down to the bone. Rosalind's lips curl into a knowing smirk as she prepares to dismiss his dramatic warnings. Smiling elegantly, Rosalind mockingly asks Ian if he actually believes such a ridiculous rumor that even a young child would laugh at. Ian's face immediately flushes bright red with pure embarrassment and fury, demanding to know what she just said to him. Her uncle steps forward to object to her living on her own, but Rosalind quickly reassures him that Marquis Garin has already promised to provide guards. Pointing a sharp finger at Rosalind, Ian demands to know why the Marquis Garin is taking such incredibly good care of her. Trembling with a mix of suspicion and jealousy, Ian directly asks Rosalind if there is something special going on between the two of them. Without a single shred of hesitation, Rosalind flatly confirms his suspicion, leaving a shocked Ian completely stuttering in disbelief. Reflecting on her past life with Garin, Rosalind politely curtsies and announces her departure, noting she still has far too much work left to do. Refusing to let her leave so easily, Ian runs after her, shouting that they are not yet finished with their conversation. Grabbing her roughly by the shoulder, Ian condescendingly reminds her that she is still young and must listen to her elders, prompting a deeply annoyed Rosalind to call out to her grandfather. Rosalind leans in and delivers a devastating truth, revealing that Ian's father, her second uncle, is also a rook of the villainous organization Macroxia, with the proof branded on the sole of his foot. Ian is frozen in absolute terror, his mind racing as he tries to process the shocking revelation about his father's true identity. Flashing a beautiful, knowing smile, Rosalind tells him that he is welcome to go and verify the mark on his father's foot himself. Smiling elegantly as she walks out the door, Rosalind mockingly wishes the family a lovely and peaceful time together. Trembling with fear, Ian slowly turns around to find his father standing directly behind him with a dark, menacing expression. Cornered by his father's terrifying aura, Ian desperately tries to plead his innocence, claiming that Rosalind's accusations are completely fabricated. Clenching his fists in absolute fury, Ian's father demands a highly detailed and convincing explanation from his terrified son. Deep within a dark, underground chamber, a massive chandelier burns with an eerie green supernatural flame. Gathered around a circular table, a group of cloaked figures discuss the capture of their 12th bishop and the sudden exposure of Ian's true identity. A spectral image reveals a man in glasses holding a slumped woman as the cloaked figures reflect on the loss of their valuable assets within the Duke's estate. The master of the organization orders the disposal of the captured bishop while instructing his subordinate to keep a close eye on Ian despite the extremely tight security of the Bellion family. Subordinates report that the security in the Bellion dungeons has tightened significantly, with guards carrying soul stones and identifying supernatural abilities. A cloaked figure grits his teeth in frustration, apologizing to his master because the strict information blackout makes it difficult to assess the situation. Staring at a pinned purple butterfly on the wall, the master growls in frustration, lamenting that they had invested so much care into manipulating the Bellion family. When asked about the state of high society, a subordinate reports that all other noble houses remain completely quiet and unsuspecting. Flashing a sinister grin, the master commands his followers to find an opportunity to eliminate Carmel before she has a chance to speak. Pointing toward an astrological clock, the master declares that their ultimate noble cause is to drag down the highest nobles and utterly trample them underfoot. Raising his hands as green flames erupt around him, the master urges his followers to prepare to sacrifice their lives as their grand plan draws near. Bowing in unison, the devoted followers swear their absolute loyalty to their master, eager to fulfill his dark desires. A luxurious jewelry box containing a sparkling pearl necklace sits beautifully on a terrace table beside a fresh bouquet of blue hydrangeas. Standing on her terrace, Rosalind reads a highly personal letter from her father, who begs her not to depart for Kaluta and promises to send her exquisite gifts. Looking out at the sunlit gardens, Rosalind visualizes her father standing gracefully before her, looking remarkably calm and sincere. Rosalind stares intently as she recalls her father's pleading crimson eyes, sensing a profound change in his demeanor. Resting her hand on the table, Rosalind reflects that her father has become far more honest with his feelings than ever before. Looking up at the lush green canopy, Rosalind wonders if speaking her mind like this in her past life could have changed her tragic fate. Rosalind recalls how, in her past life, she chose a path of raw tyranny and violence to protect her pride, lashing out at anyone who dared to cross her. Because her family never seemed to care about her, Rosalind resorted to tyrannical behavior as her sole defense mechanism, leaving her isolated and despised by society. She remembers the end of her first life, which was plagued by vicious rumors in high society and the pure hatred of everyone around her. When she could no longer bear the hostility and fled the duchy, a crowd of vengeful enemies immediately hunted her down to seek retribution. Desperate to survive, Rosalind had gathered highly sensitive secrets on rival nobles and sold them to fund her escape. To secure that valuable information, she had ruthlessly used, betrayed, and discarded everyone around her, leaving a trail of blood in her wake. While fleeing her enemies, she had hidden in a peaceful village, but when the Imperial army tracked her down and slaughtered the villagers, she abandoned them to save herself. Hiding under her dark hood, Rosalind remembers the unbearable guilt of choosing her own survival over the lives of the innocent people who had helped her. Leaning against the stone balcony, Rosalind laments that she cannot escape the heavy weight of her past regrets, wondering if asking her family for help back then would have changed her destiny. She gazes at memories of a warmer, happier life with her family, wondering if she could have achieved a peaceful ending if things had been different. Looking at the letter on her table, Rosalind quickly dismisses these thoughts as meaningless, useless what-ifs. Telling herself to get a grip, Rosalind resolves to stop wallowing in the past and focus entirely on the crucial path that lies ahead. She shifts her attention to an official envelope from the Imperial Palace, inviting her to a banquet to demonstrate the continued alliance between the families despite her broken engagement. Sitting elegantly at her tea table, Rosalind decides she must decline all other social invitations, except for the Imperial banquet. Her fingers trace a beautifully sealed envelope adorned with delicate white flowers, immediately recognizing the sender. Rosalind recalls Prince Arma's elegant handwriting, in which he politely requested a private meeting at the Villainess estate to deliver a special gift. Staring down at the letter, Rosalind's red eyes soften as she contemplates the prince's unyielding politeness. Recognizing that Arma likely wants to convince her to reconsider the broken engagement, Rosalind decides a private meeting is unwise and resolves to decline his request. Picking up the very last envelope, Rosalind's lips curl into a cold, amused smirk as she reads the brief, dramatic message, "You go too far." Tearing up Garen's letter, Rosalind reflects that he has failed to secure the successful bid for the Nolang mine. Setting aside the torn letters, Rosalind notes with a calm, satisfied expression that information belongs entirely to the one who acts on it first. With things moving exactly as she anticipated, Rosalind hears a polite knock at her door amidst a backdrop of white flowers. A maid enters the sunlit room to inform Rosalind that the Duke, her grandfather, is looking for her. Staring at the shredded pieces of the letter, Rosalind realizes her grandfather must have already learned the truth about the mine. Walking down the long, red-carpeted corridor, Rosalind recalls that someone closely associated with the Nolang mine attended the Imperial Castle banquet. Rosalind tries to recall the man's name, remembering how an aggressive nobleman named Baron Robert had once drawn a sword in front of her. Rosalind remembers Baron Robert's arrogant demand for her to marry him, smiling slyly as she anticipates the satisfying downfall of his family. The elegant double doors to the Duke's grand chambers creak open, framed by beautiful pink blossoms. Entering the luxurious chamber, Rosalind curtsies gracefully and greets her grandfather, who is enjoying a glass of red wine by the window. Her grandfather brings up the Nolang mine, revealing they won the bid but mentioning rumors that the discovered minerals might not be amber. Looking at Rosalind, the Duke asks how she was able to provide such highly specific and accurate advice when no one else knew of it. Staring deeply into her eyes, the Duke wonders if his granddaughter has somehow awakened an abyss, visualizing a white-clad figure chained to a sacred structure. Shaded in mystery, Rosalind maintains a calm, enigmatic smile as she prepares to respond to her grandfather. Smiling elegantly amidst a blooming bouquet of pink roses, Rosalind calmly confirms his suspicion with polite grace. Radiating poise and confidence, Rosalind maintains her beautiful smile, completely unfazed by her grandfather's heavy questioning. In her mind, Rosalind confesses that she simply knows the future from her past life, but since that is too complicated to explain, she decides to let him believe her lie. Taking a slow drag of his cigar, the Duke observes that while she doesn't strongly resemble her mother in character, her eyes are a perfect match. The Duke fondly reflects on his brave daughter-in-law who chose to embrace her destiny despite being poisoned by her husband's venom. He remembers how she refused the antidote to protect her unborn child, passing away shortly after giving birth to Rosalind while her devastated husband wept at her bedside. He recalls how Churty's greatest fear was losing his sickly newborn daughter, panicking when her temperature rose to a dangerously high fever. Haunted by the memory of his wife's death, Churty lived in constant terror that his own toxic abilities would inadvertently harm his precious daughter. Becoming deeply unstable, Churty sheltered Rosalind like a delicate greenhouse flower, keeping her isolated and refusing to let anyone, including himself, get too close. As time passed, Rosalind grew up incredibly timid, keeping her distance from her family in a quiet, dark world of isolation. The Duke remembers how whenever he tried to talk to her to resolve their distance, Rosalind would turn pale and run away in absolute terror. Feeling helpless, the Duke decided to stand by and watch from afar, using the excuse that it was best not to trigger her fragile state. However, after surviving a brush with death, Rosalind emerged as an entirely different person, standing strong and composed with striking red eyes. The Duke contemplates how her near-death experience completely transformed her, leaving her detached, blunt, and seemingly devoid of any affection. Shaking off her past timidity like a bird breaking through glass, Rosalind is now determined to leave the safe nest her grandfather built and step into the harsh world. Flashing a warm smile, her grandfather gently scolds her for calling him Your Grace, reminding her that he told her to call him grandfather. Rosalind explains that she used the formal title because she assumed he would find the affectionate term unpleasant coming from her. Rosalind reminds him that, strictly speaking, she's considered an illegitimate child and not a true member of the Bellion family. Smiling warmly, the Duke dismisses her worries, privately cursing Churdy for being a frustrating fool who still hasn't told her the truth. Resolved to put an end to the long-standing lies, the Duke decides to reveal the truth that Churdy was too afraid to share. The Duke drops a massive bombshell, flatly telling a shocked Rosalind that she is not an illegitimate child. He explains that she is properly registered on the Bellion family registry, taking a sip of his wine as he delivers the shocking news. A beautiful floral crest frames the truth. Rosalind is indeed the Duke's only granddaughter and Churdy Bellion's only biological daughter. Tapping his cigar against the ashtray, her grandfather advises her to speak directly with her father to hear the rest of the story. Sitting in stunned silence, Rosalind is deeply shaken, realizing that she lived her entire first life believing she was a hated, illegitimate child. Staring blankly, Rosalind tries to recall if her quiet, distant father had ever actually told her that she was illegitimate. As Chapter 10 begins with blazing torches, the Duke's internal thoughts reveal his deep concern for his unique granddaughter. Walking down the stone stairs, Rosalind learns that her father had actually gone completely berserk with worry during her recent crisis. The Duke explains that Churdy is simply clumsy at expressing his feelings because of how he was raised, assuring her that her father has never once hated her. Swirling in a cloud of cigar smoke, the Duke gives Rosalind his absolute word that her father deeply cares for her. The Duke regretfully admits that he was so focused on external matters that he failed to notice how the children inside his own home were struggling to grow. Standing before her father's double doors, Rosalind decides she must confirm her grandfather's words immediately to clear up any lingering misunderstandings. Stealing her resolve, Rosalind reaches out and knocks firmly on the wooden door to her father's laboratory. From inside the room, her father's irritated voice immediately shouts at her to stop annoying him and get lost. Churdy continues to yell through the door, angrily warning the visitor to leave unless they want to be poisoned and die. As the door swings open, Churdy turns around in absolute shock, holding a bubbling tube of purple poison as he stares at his daughter. Standing inside his laboratory, Churdy aggressively warns the visitor that they clearly do not realize how terrifying poison is. Opening the door, Churdy is stunned to find his daughter Rosalind standing gracefully before him, dressed in an elegant dark gown. Staring at her in absolute shock, Churdy stammered, wondering why Rosalind is standing outside his laboratory. Panicking, Churdy loudly scolds Rosalind for coming to such a dangerous place, warning her that she shouldn't be there. Churdy continues to complain that she will make herself sick again. Readership calmly asks if he is simply worried that the toxic air in his laboratory will harm her fragile health. Churdy freezes, completely flustered and blushing with embarrassment, as Rosalind effortlessly sees right through his harsh words to his true protective feelings. Rosalind mentions that she had always assumed he wanted her to get lost because he hated her, leaving Churdy to weakly explain that it was merely a slip of the tongue. Feeling deeply frustrated with his own poor communication skills, Churdy trembles with regret, wishing he had stuck to writing letters to express his thoughts. Shrouded in dark chains, Churdy laments that his defense mechanism always makes him speak harshly when he is nervous, reflecting on how rarely he ever speaks to other people. Surrounded by shadows, Churdy panics internally over how he is supposed to talk to his own daughter without accidentally hurting her feelings. Rosalind stands patiently before him, calmly asking Churdy if he plans to keep her standing out in the hallway like this. Rosalind pretends to cough, complaining that the stuffy air is hurting her nose, which prompts Churdy to panic that his toxic powers are leaking out. Churdy frantically urges her to go back upstairs so he can bring her an antidote, but Rosalind firmly replies that she prefers to stay right there. Looking at him with a composed and unyielding expression, Rosalind remains perfectly calm despite her father's desperate protests. Flustered by her refusal to leave, Churdy desperately suggests that they should at least move to the reception room next door. Looking around, Churdy frantically realizes that the neighboring rooms are cluttered chemical storages, dining halls, or training rooms, none of which are clean or suitable for Rosalind. In a cute chibi scene, Rosalind innocently asks if she should just leave if he doesn't want her around, causing Churdy to quickly and desperately shout no. Churdy finally yields and invites her in, though he quickly rushes ahead to clean up the messy laboratory and asks her to wait just a moment. Ignoring his request to wait, Rosalind steps into the messy room and comments on the clutter, while Churdy holds a pile of scrolls and sighs that he didn't tell her she could enter yet. Churdy hands a bottle of golden antidote to Rosalind, gently telling her to take a seat and drink it first to stay safe. While Churdy busies himself making tea and apologizing that it might not taste good, Rosalind holds the antidote and realizes her grandfather's words about her father's secret affection are entirely true. Rosalind decides that asking her father about her illegitimate status right now won't yield a proper answer, so she resolves to ask him for what she needs immediately. Rosalind suddenly asks her father if he has ever attended a banquet, causing Churdy to instantly freeze mid-pour with the teacup in his hand. Blushing and looking thoroughly bewildered, Churdy slowly turns around and repeats her question in a daze. Rosalind repeats her question, asking if he has ever attended a banquet before, leaving Churdy flustered as he wonders why she is suddenly asking about such events. Looking downcast, Churdy admits that he rarely attends banquets or social events, which Rosalind privately notes is exactly what she expected. Rosalind reflects on how her father always hated social events and kept her isolated as well, barely attending her coming-of-age ceremony and preventing her from having a proper debutante ball despite being a princess. Holding a shining gold ring, Rosalind resolves that she must attend the upcoming imperial banquet to smoothly break off her engagement and maintain peaceful relations between their families. Pointing out that he must not know much about formal affairs, Rosalind asks Churdy if he even owns formal attire, to which Churdy sighs and asks why she keeps bringing up banquets. Resting her chin on her hand, Rosalind slyly remarks that she wanted to attend the imperial banquet with him, but suggests she will simply have to go with Geron instead. Churdy's protective instincts instantly flare up as he furiously declares that he would rather go himself than let her attend with Geron, exactly as Rosalind anticipated. When Churdy grumpily asks when the banquet is scheduled, Rosalind sighs and points out that his hands are trembling, asking if he will truly be all right. Churdy is startled to realize that his toxic, dark supernatural power is actively leaking from his hands even as he holds a spoon. Feeling insecure, Churdy looks down and asks if it would help if he wore more restraint tools to suppress his toxic abilities. Rosalind stares at him, deeply saddened by the thought of the painful restraint tools made of soul stones that her father already wears in secret. Rosalind points out that wearing more restraint tools will only cause him greater pain, questioning what good it would do to force himself to suffer further. Churdy looks away sadly, admitting that while the restraint tools drain his strength and leave him feeling weak, he doesn't care as long as it keeps her safe. In a comical chibi moment, Rosalind bluntly states that his self-sacrifice is exactly why he looks so pale and sickly, leaving Churdy crushed under a heavy stone of gloom. Holding up her hand, Rosalind declares that if he is going to escort her to the banquet, he must agree to make 3 promises. Raising one finger, Rosalind demands that he must remain completely calm at the banquet no matter what happens, to which Churdy eagerly promises to do his best. For her second condition, Rosalind points up and demands that he move his laboratory and quarters above ground, leaving Churdy thoroughly confused by her sudden request. In a cute chibi panel, Rosalind explains that staying in such a dark, subterranean place would make even the brightest person feel incredibly gloomy. Striking a playful and adorable pose, Rosalind delivers her final demand, telling her father that he must dress up to look his absolute best for the event. Running a hand through his long hair, Churdy submissively agrees to her terms, promising to make himself presentable and even get a haircut. Staring deeply into his daughter's eyes, Churdy feels a sudden wave of emotion as he looks at her. Rosalind smiles brilliantly amidst a backdrop of blooming flowers, expressing her confident desire to stand out more than anyone else at the banquet. Churdy gasps in awe as he gazes at his daughter's stunning, radiant smile. Looking at her joyful expression, Churdy's heart swells as he realizes that Rosalind looks exactly like her late mother when she smiles. Churdy fondly recalls his late wife, realizing with deep emotion that the precious smile he had been searching for all these years was right in front of him in his daughter. Churdy smiles warmly and tenderly, resolving to do exactly as Rosalind wishes if it means seeing her happy smile once again. There is nothing I wouldn't do. The regular banquet of the Imperial Castle is held 4 times a year. This event lasts 3 to 5 days, allowing noble families to socialize and discuss important matters concerning the imperial family. Because so many people attend, It often serves as a stage for major announcements from the nobility and the crown. Unless there is an exceptional circumstance, nobles and their heirs are expected to attend, but previously only the Duke had ever attended from the Bellion family. As the heavy double doors creak open to reveal a blinding light, the announcer introduces His Grace, Duke Devon Bellion, and the young Duke, Cherde Bellion. Duke Devon strides confidently into the banquet hall, followed closely by Cherde, who nervously holds hands with his stunning daughter, Rosalind. The announcer proclaims, Princess Rosalind Bellion is entering. The entire family's arrival instantly draws everyone's attention. The surrounding nobles begin to whisper amongst themselves, questioning what the Bellions are doing there after being absent from social circles for so long, and mockingly recalling Princess Rosalind's disastrous debutante ball, calling her a mere stutterer. Hearing the cruel whispers, Cherde grows increasingly tense, while Rosalind recalls that the original Rosalind Bellion in this world was indeed known as a gloomy stutterer, but that was the past. Glancing up with her radiant red eyes, Rosalind confidently declares to herself that the current her is a completely different person. The gossiping nobles stare in utter disbelief, wondering who the beautiful young lady is and refusing to believe she's the same gloomy girl who used to wear ridiculous makeup. The noblewomen admire her breathtaking gown, recognizing it as an exclusive masterpiece from the Fluye boutique that was reserved specifically for her, despite other customers offering to pay extra. Feeling the pressure of the crowd's intense staring, Cherde mutters that they will wear a hole in Rosalind's face, but Duke Devon silences the murmuring crowd with a single terrifying glare. Suddenly, a cheerful noble wearing glasses approaches the group, laughing as he greets Devon, saying, "Ahaha, Your Grace, you haven't changed a bit." The glasses-wearing noble asks Devon if he has been well, prompting other nobles to quickly gather around to greet the Duke and Cherde, eager to make a connection with the legendary Bellion family. Watching the crowd swarm her father and grandfather, Rosalind quietly realizes that everyone is desperate to make a connection with House Bellion. Knowing how suffocating the crowd will get, Rosalind decides she needs to make her move before it becomes too crowded. Rosalind turns to her father and calmly announces, "Father, I'm gonna go get a drink." Startled, Cherde offers to fetch it for her or go together. Rosalind gently declines, telling Cherde to stay because everyone is looking for him, and promises to bring a drink back for him too. She slips away gracefully, leaving a panicked Cherde swamped by the crowd of nobles. Stepping away to a quieter spot, Rosalind picks up a glass of champagne from a tray, admitting she feels a bit sorry for her father but is already too tired to deal with the overwhelming crowd. Taking a sip of her drink, Rosalind smiles as she sees the comical reflection in her glass of her father looking completely flustered and surrounded by eager nobles. Standing amidst the flowers, Cherde looks incredibly handsome, yet visibly nervous, prompting Rosalind to reflect that dressing up properly really brings out his features, which he luckily inherited from his father. As Rosalind enjoys her quiet moment, a shadow falls over her, and a smug voice calls out, well, look who it is." Rosalind's red eyes narrow coldly as she spots Gilles Robert, whom she inwardly refers to as a filthy pig, approaching her with a greasy grin. Gilles Robert slickly remarks that Rosalind looks quite decent now that she is dressed up according to his advice, commenting that her dress accentuates her figure. Rosalind cuts him off with a sweet, mocking smile, asking, "Baron Gilbert, how is your livestock business going?" Taken aback, Jules stammers that his name is actually Gilles Robert and that his family is in the textile and mineral business, to which Rosalind casually replies, "Is that so? My mistake." Rosalind smiles inwardly as she notes, "I kept seeing a pig in front of me, you see." Gilles chuckles condescendingly, telling Rosalind that since she only stays inside her estate, she doesn't know how the world works, arrogantly declaring that a woman only needs to stay at home and support her husband. Gilles leans in closely and touches her hair, suggesting that her elegant dress must mean she is interested in his proposal, and sleazily offers to be her practice partner for the things she will eventually do with the prince. Staring at the greasy noble panting right in front of her, Rosalind inwardly notes that a walking pig doesn't know its place when trying to prey on a human, as a dangerous smirk spreads across her face. With swift and sudden force, Rosalind swings her arm, raising her full glass of champagne. With a resounding crash, Rosalind smashes the glass directly over Gilles Robert's head, shattering it into pieces. Gilles falls backward onto the ground in absolute shock and pain, while Rosalind calmly stands over him, holding the broken stem of the glass with a cold, unyielding gaze. Standing tall, Rosalind casts a terrifying shadow over the trembling noble as the remaining shards of glass scatter across the floor. Dazed and confused, Gilles looks up as droplets of liquid and blood begin to drip down his forehead. Touching his face and seeing the red stains on his fingers, Gilles gasps in horror and shrieks, blood? Clinging to his head, Gilles points at her and yells, "What do you think you're doing, you crazy ruffian wench?" as Rosalind calmly prepares her heel. With a fierce stomp, Rosalind drives her high heel down, shattering the floor as she coldly asks, "Do you have any idea who the crazy one actually is?" Rosalind grinds her heel directly onto his hand, ignoring his agonizing screams as she lists his crimes of harassing powerless residents and young noble ladies who were too afraid of ruining their families to speak up. Smiling beautifully with a backdrop of roses, Rosalind looks down at him and softly says, "But I am neither of those. And just as you said, I'm simply a crazy ruffian." As Gilles screams in agony under her heel, Rosalind continues to call him out for preying on whoever he wanted because they couldn't speak up. Looking down at the groveling noble with a dark, triumphant smile, Rosalind declares that unlike his previous victims, she is a total mad dog. Closing her eyes with a sweet, chilling smile, Rosalind whispers that there are women in this world who live far outside his stupid, narrow little world. Gilles writhes on the floor, crying out in pain as Rosalind continues to grind her high heel mercilessly into his hand. Rosalind suddenly gasps, "Oops," and deliberately feigns a slip, throwing her body off balance to set up her play. Enraged and humiliated, Gilles lunges at her, screaming, "You crazy bitch." Before Gilles can touch her, Duc de Vannes grabs him by the collar from behind and violently hoists him in the air, roaring, "Hey, what do you think you're doing to my precious granddaughter?" Cherty immediately rushes to Rosalind's side and holds her shoulders, asking if she is all right, only to freeze in horror as he notices a fresh red scratch on her ankle. Seeing his daughter's injury, Cherty's face contorts with absolute rage as his terrifying dark power flares up, growling, "How dare you touch my daughter?" Duke Devon holds the choking noble in place while Cherty lunges forward with murderous intent, shouting, "What do you think you're doing to her?" as Gilles realizes he has made a fatal mistake. Jules Robert tries to shift the blame, desperately shouting that the princess was the one throwing amorous glances at him first and is only changing her story because things didn't go her way. Infuriated by his lies, Cherty grabs Gilles by the collar and aggressively shakes him, telling him to cut the crap while the pathetic noble cries out for someone to help and stop him. Cherty continues to choke the terrified Gilles while murmurs ripple through the crowd of onlookers, who whisper about the commotion and realize that young Baron Robert was indeed harassing the young lady of House Bellion. Heavy footsteps echo through the hall as a prominent figure walks toward the scene, prompting someone in the crowd to nervously wonder if they recognize that voice. Recognizing his son's voice screaming for help, Gil's father pales in shock, realizing in horror that the man being choked is indeed his son, Robert. Duke Devon Bellion steps forward with a terrifying, bloodthirsty glare, warning everyone to only step forward if they do not value their lives, declaring that he will personally deal with them. Terrified by Devon Bellion's direct involvement, Giles's father stands frozen, sweating profusely and wondering what on earth he is supposed to do. He recalls that although people call Devon a toothless tiger now that he is older, he is the legendary figure who conquered the underworld all on his own despite being born illegitimate. Gilles' father recalls Devon's infamous reputation as a murderous demon and cruel slayer. Seeing Devon's terrifying grin, he realizes that if he tries to intervene and call him father right now, Devon might slice his throat without hesitation. Gilles' father watches Cherty's dark poison abyss flare up as he chokes Gilles. He realizes that if he steps forward, Cherty might lose control and go into a berserk state, and if he gets caught up in that and dies, their entire family will be finished. Deciding to abandon his son to save himself and their family, Gil's father turns and flees into the crowd, leaving Gil screaming in disbelief as Cherty growls, "How dare you?" Droplets of glowing purple poison begin to seep from Cherty's hand onto Gil's collar as he prepares to kill the noble for daring to frame his precious daughter. Just as Cherty is about to deliver a fatal blow, Rosalind steps forward and gently places her hand on her father's arm to stop him. Standing elegantly amidst the chaos, Rosalind calmly looks at her father and tells him that is enough, urging him to please stop. Rosalind asks her father if he realizes he is losing control of his power again, while Gilles gasps in terror beneath Cherty's grip. Cherty releases his grip and Gilles collapses to the floor, writhing in agony as the residual purple poison burns him. The surrounding nobles look down at Gilles with utter disgust and contempt, gossiping about what a pathetic sight he is and calling him an embarrassment to the nobility, recalling how he used to make a fool of himself with other young ladies as well. Overwhelmed by humiliation, Gilles' hand reaches toward the sharp glass shards scattered on the floor, his eyes filled with resentment. Kneeling on the ground, Jill's face contorts with venomous rage as he inwardly curses Rosalind, thinking that just because she has gotten a little prettier, she has forgotten what he did for her and dared to humiliate him like this. In a fit of absolute madness, Giles grabs a sharp glass shard and lunges forward, screaming in rage, determined to ruin Rosalind's beautiful face so she can never become the imperial princess consort. Giles aggressively charges at Rosalind with the glass shard in his hand, while Churdy and Devon look on in shock. Rosalind gasps in surprise, her crimson eyes widening as she faces the oncoming attack. Suddenly, a firm black boot stomps down on Giles's foot with a resounding thud, stopping his mad charge in an instant. Giles stumbles back in confusion, only to find a mysterious black-haired young man in a white imperial uniform standing defensively in front of Rosalind. With a swift and powerful blow, Gil's glasses are violently knocked off his face, shattering against the floor. The black-haired young man stands firmly, but a fresh cut on his cheek begins to bleed, prompting a shocked onlooker to gasp, realizing he is His Highness, the Third Prince. Realizing he has just assaulted the imperial prince, Jill drops the bloody glass shard in absolute horror, stammering that he didn't mean to. As Churdy and Duke Devon shield Rosalind, she stares at the blood-stained glass shard on the floor, her heart sinking as she worries if Arma got hurt because of her once again. Looking at the blood, Rosalind is overcome with emotion, reflecting that every time Arma throws himself into harm's way to protect her, she is forced to face the painful memories of her past life that she desperately wanted to forget. Rosalind recalls a memory from her past life where Arma stood before a group of cloaked assassins, urging her to go quickly while promising to follow her no matter how many tried to harm him. In her memories, his reassuring voice echoed through the dark forest, promising her that he would surely follow her. She fondly remembers the back of that reckless man who had stood before her to protect her without a single moment of hesitation. Back in the present, Arma turns around and gently calls out to her, looking at her with concern. Rosalind stands frozen in shock as Arma softly asks if she is all right and if she was cut by the glass. Enraged by the near-fatal attack on his granddaughter, Churdy violently grabs Giles by the neck again, screaming that he must really want to die today as the Imperial Guards rush to intervene. Duke Devon gently holds Rosalind's shoulder, asking if she is all right since she looks so pale, while Rosalind silently tries to catch her breath, admitting to herself that for a moment her heart had stopped. A haunting memory of Arma lying dead in a pool of blood flashes before Rosalind's eyes, making her realize she was terrified of losing him again. She looks down sadly and whispers to Arma that he really doesn't need to shield her like that. Duke Devon misunderstands and replies with a warm, comforting smile, declaring that he would shield her 100 or even 1,000 times. Surrounded by beautiful white daisies and glowing light, Arma looks at her with a gentle, heartwarming smile, his cheeks blushing. Rosalind remains silent, staring at him as a wave of complex emotions washes over her. Rosalind's inner monologue reveals her deep pain, reflecting that even though she changed so many things from her past life, seeing him completely unchanged makes something inside her break. Having endured her past life entirely alone, she thought she had long given up on sharing warmth with anyone. She recalls opening her eyes to this second life, thinking her hard-won peace had been disturbed, viewing this new life as nothing more than a long, meaningless extension of her first. While she was so sure of her cold indifference, Duke Devon looks at her with deep worry, softly calling out to his granddaughter. Tears stream down Rosalind's face, prompting Devon to gasp in surprise, asking if she is crying. Arma looks at her in shock as her tears fall. Rosalind wonders why these gentle words of worry, as if she had secretly longed for such warmth all along, pierce her heart more deeply than any loneliness ever could. Exhausted by the overwhelming emotions, Rosalind lets out a soft sigh as Arma and Devon watch over her. Suddenly, Rosalind's vision fades and she collapses, prompting panicked cries of her name as she loses consciousness. In the darkness of her mind, Rosalind's final thought is a frustrated vow, reminding herself that she had sworn never to let herself be this weak again. Rosalind feels as though she is sinking deep into a dark, silent abyss of water, surrounded by rising bubbles. The scene transitions to the next morning, showing a beautiful, sunlit imperial palace under a clear blue sky as Rosalind slowly flutters her eyes open. Waking up in a lavishly decorated bed surrounded by white roses, Rosalind confusedly looks around, realizing she is in the imperial palace due to the ridiculously lavish decor. As she sits up, Rosalind recalls her last memory of fainting in the banquet hall, wondering what happened after she lost consciousness. Rosalind wakes up in bed, rubbing her forehead in exasperation as she wonders, did I seriously faint from a fever just because I cried a little? Her inner monologue continues, recalling that after leaving the ducal house in her past life, she had gone through so much that she completely forgot a crucial detail. Looking at the elegant dress prepared for her, Rosalind wraps herself in a shawl, remembering that her body was quite weak around this time in her past life. Determined to make the most of her stay at the Imperial Palace, Rosalind decides to visit the library to gather information and gain an advantage for future events. As Rosalind quietly slips out of her room, she reflects that while the banquet commotion and her fainting weren't part of the plan, she will at least get something out of it. Meanwhile, the scene transitions to the grand and lavishly decorated office of the Emperor. Inside the office, the Emperor sits back with a glass of red wine, casually asking the young prince in front of him, "So, you want me to release Baron Robert?" The blonde Emperor sits elegantly across from his son, questioning him by pointing out that he stepped in as royalty to blow a simple noble dispute out of proportion. Staring intently at his youngest son, the Emperor wonders to himself, "My youngest, what are you calculating?" Behind his silver-rimmed glasses, the young black-haired prince, Arma, quietly calculates his next moves under his father's scrutiny. Standing firmly with his hands clasped, Arma boldly retorts to the Emperor, "You were the one doing that, father." Observing his son's sharp gaze, the Emperor's thoughts drift back to the past, noting that Arma looks exactly like his late mother, Cecilia. The Emperor recalls Cecilia, the only commoner woman he ever loved. To protect her, he had faked her death and hidden her away without giving her any status or power. In order to keep her safe, Arma was unfortunately raised as an illegitimate child, growing rebellious and losing all interest in the throne and imperial power. Knowing that none of his other sons have the makings of an emperor like Arma, the Emperor wonders why he is suddenly stepping forward, while laughing off his thoughts out loud. Arma points to the stack of formal memorials on the desk, noting that the Robert family has already offered their wealth and businesses to save their heir. Arma explains that Baron Robert has also formally apologized to the Bellyan family, leaving the decision to accept it entirely up to them. Touching his bandaged cheek, Arma suggests ending the matter there, since the Baron handled it cleanly, and he has no wish to execute his brother's friend. Reflecting on Arma's words, the Emperor recognizes that for someone as calculating as Arma, calling this a mistake is a massive shift in behavior. Smiling warmly, the Emperor agrees to release Baron Robert, noting that he lined his pockets quite well thanks to this incident, though he calls the Baron pitiful. Arma lets out a sarcastic chuckle, replying to his father's comment about Baron Robert's pitiful situation. The Emperor swirls his wine, teasingly asking why Arma looks at him as if telling him to look in the mirror, to which Arma replies that he did not exactly fail. Staring at Arma's reflection in his wine glass, the Emperor's eyes gleam with interest as he notes that a splendid successor is standing right in front of him. A sudden knock on the grand office door interrupts their conversation, and the Emperor calls for them to enter. A butler rushes into the office with an anxious expression, reporting that he has urgent news for the Emperor and the Prince. Upon hearing that Lady Bellyan has disappeared, Arma's eyes widen in shock as he instantly loses his calm composure. As the butler explains that the Bellyan family is also searching for her, Arma begins to stand up to join the search, completely forgetting his father's presence. The Emperor watches his son's reaction with a knowing, highly amused smirk as Arma grips his sleeve in agitation. Watching Arma's unusually shaken reaction, the Emperor finds the situation highly entertaining, wondering if Arma did all this out of genuine feelings for Rosalind. Meanwhile, in the quiet depths of the Imperial Library, Rosalind sighs in disappointment at the lack of useful information about Kaluta. Holding a book titled Kaluta, the Savage Land, Rosalind tries to make sense of the similarities between this world and her past world. As Rosalind decides to wrap up and get some food, she suddenly senses a shadowy presence sneaking up directly behind her. Rosalind quickly spins around defensively, but her wrist is firmly caught midair by the intruder. With wide, blushing eyes, Arma desperately calls out to her, pleading, "It's me, Lady Rosalind." Surprised to see the prince, Rosalind lowers her guard as Armand apologizes for startling her and explains that everyone has been looking for her. Rosalind stares up at the tall prince in silence, momentarily taken aback by his sudden arrival. Looking at his face, Rosalind immediately notices the fresh scratch on Arma's cheek, which makes her feel a pang of guilt. Arma explains with a nervous chuckle that her grandfather and father have turned the castle upside down out of worry, leading Rosalind to wonder if they actually tore the place apart. Arma suggests they reassure Trudy quickly before he loses his mind, prompting Rosalind to inwardly sigh at her father's soft-hearted fussiness. Rosalind smiles softly, reflecting on how terrifying and distant her father was in her past life. She then apologizes, explaining she simply lost track of time while reading. As Rosalind prepares to leave to avoid causing more trouble, Arma stops her, asking if he could speak with her for a moment. Looking at her with a gentle, hopeful expression, Arma reveals he knows about her trip and asks, "Would it be all right if I joined you?" Without a single moment of hesitation, Rosalind flatly rejects his request, telling him, "There is no need for you to come." Hurt by her cold refusal, Arma asks if there is a problem with him, but Rosalind calmly turns away, stating that everyone must be waiting. Rosalind walks out of the library doors, politely taking her leave and leaving a stunned Arma standing alone in the grand hall. Arma stands frozen in absolute shock, whispering a confused "what?" to himself as the library doors shut behind her. Standing in the dark, Arma stares blankly, wondering in disbelief if their relationship is really going to end like this. Arma's inner thoughts reveal his disappointment, as he expected at least an explanation or a chance to persuade her. He recalls sitting on a bench next to Rosalind, reflecting that she was the only person in the entire empire who never looked down on him or treated him with disdain. The scene flashes back to Arma's stunned face in the library as the door slams shut, leaving him speechless and deeply hurt. "Even if she rejected me, I thought she would at least explain why. I thought I could listen to her and persuade her. She never looked down on me, even when everyone else in the empire did." An illegitimate prince with no backing. Because of the emperor's fleeting love affair, both my mother and I had to live erased from the world. The greatest revenge I could take was to escape the emperor who wanted me as his heir and vanish. So, just as those who despised me wished to see, I closed my eyes, covered my ears, and played the fool. Then, the first thing that ever truly belonged to me appeared. Rosalind Bellion? I was well aware of the rumors about her. An ugly duckling in a situation much like my own. Perhaps that's why. Though I always hid my true self behind a mask, he never let anyone get close to him. As children, Arma gently offers his hand to a young, tearful Rosalind who looks up at him with wide, startled eyes. She took my outstretched hand and accepted me, exactly as I was. That's why I put so much effort into this long game of playing house. For the sake of the poor girl who would be left all alone when I departed, it was a small kindness I could easily afford to show. "Your Highness, Princess Rosalind is on the villa's roof." "What?" Arma turns around in complete shock, dropping his calm demeanor as cold sweat pours down his face. In all the daily stories she shared with me, there was never once a shadow of death. So why? Was playing house something only I was doing? And since returning from the brink of death, Rosalind seems like an entirely different person. Has she given up on me? Someone brave enough to face death could easily find the courage for anything else. Choosing my brother to go to Kaluta? And those conditions, the ideal type she described, it really might be my brother. Seeing them clash, I foolishly assumed she was doing it for my sake. But what if she wanted someone like my brother all along? And if the two of them go to Kaluta and spend all that time together? If Rosalind wants to break off the engagement to be with the one she truly desires? No, young lady. Arma runs as fast as he can down the Imperial Palace's grand corridors, screaming out for Rosalind. Arma races forward in sheer desperation, grit and worry evident in every line of his face as he cries out her name. "Young Lady Rosalind." Arma suddenly stops as he spots Rosalind in her beautiful long gown, quietly walking ahead in the brightly lit corridor. Startled by the sudden shout, Rosalind turns her head slightly, softly whispering, "Arma, choosing my brother to accompany you to Kaluta? Did you choose my brother to accompany you to Kaluta because he matches the ideal type you mentioned before?" Rosalind's crimson eyes widen in confusion as she repeats his words. Ideal type? Ah, right. He's talking about what I said that day off the top of my head. I only used someone else's ideal type as an excuse, but it's true that I need someone like that for the trip to Kaluta. Rosalind nods and calmly replies, "Yes, I knew it, so that was it, but I won't let my brother take you away." Locked in this suffocating birdcage, waiting for the day I can break free, was when I was sharing silly, everyday stories with you. Holding her book close, Rosalind stares calmly at Arma, asking, "So, is that all you wanted to ask?" If there's nothing else, Rosalind begins to turn away, leaving Arma with his head lowered as he struggles with his overwhelming fear of being left behind. "Don't go, Rosalind. I will." Become your ideal type, Arma passionately declares, his cheeks brightly blushing as he grips his chest in determination. What? I'll be strong-willed, fierce, and full of masculinity. I'll be that person. So let me go with the delegation to Kaluta. Why is he trying so hard to go? Well, it would be strange to keep rejecting him here. After all, the more cards I have in my hand, the better. Rosalind turns slightly and smiles, saying, "Very well then, you may come." "Thank you. I'm so glad you're letting me join you." Arma's face instantly lights up with an incredibly bright, joyful smile, his cheeks completely flushed. Rosalind stares at him in silence, her crimson eyes trembling as she looks at his purely radiant expression. Ah, how foolish of me. I only realized it after seeing that smile. Your reason for trying to stop the break-off of the engagement and follow me to Kaluta is obvious. Because you're a kind person who stayed by my side until the very end. Even now, you must be worrying about your weak-willed fiancé who made such an extreme choice. The more I force myself to keep my distance, the more anxious and desperate Arma will become. So, well then, third prince, to help you leave me with a light heart, Rosalind gently gathers her dress as she prepares to walk away. Holding her book securely, Rosalind steps away with a serene, beautiful smile, determined to proceed with her plans. A few days later at Rosalind's room, "My daughter, must you really go to Kaluta?" Churdy Bellion clasps his hands tightly, looking at his daughter with teary, desperate eyes. Rosalind looks back at her overly worried father with a gentle, reassuring expression, calling out softly, "Father." Rosalind reflects on the final day of the banquet at the imperial castle, wondering how she could possibly undo the emperor's official decree. She recalls the shocking announcement that she must accompany the delegation to Kaluta, realizing she has to go as a diplomat. Churdy Bellion desperately protests, worried about his daughter's fragile health, but Chibi Rosalind calmly points out it is the 11th time he has asked. Rosalind asks her father to drop the subject, inwardly reflecting that her sudden disappearance to the library back at the imperial castle only fueled his deep anxiety. She thinks back on Churdy's overprotective antics, which started with him moving his bedroom right next to hers and dropping by at all hours of the day for tea. Rosalind recalls how she told him that if he was going to be so distracting, he should just bring his paperwork and work inside her bedroom instead. Her father's face immediately lights up with pure joy as he eagerly asks if he is really allowed to work in her room. Rosalind looks on in disbelief as Churdy actually moves all his massive stacks of documents and sets up office directly in her room. Her father gently holds out a beautifully crafted silver-hilted dagger wrapped in red velvet, catching Rosalind completely off guard. Rosalind recognizes the weapon as the same one Lady Carmel boasted about receiving from Churdy in her past life, asking in shock if he forged it himself. Her father explains that he infused his own abyss power into the molten metal of a special mineral, creating a blade that will never harm its wielder. He reveals that even someone who is unawakened can temporarily use the abyss power sealed within the blade, as Rosalind stares in awe. Rosalind realizes this dagger represents the revolutionary abyss weapon technology, the core business that her duchy tragically lost to Macroxia in her past life. She is left in deep thought, wondering why her father would choose to give such an incredibly valuable weapon directly to her. Rosalind continues to reflect on the gravity of holding this abyss weapon, knowing it was the very business that Macroxia stole to deal their duchy a devastating blow. Testing the weapon, Rosalind is amazed to find it lightweight and perfectly suited for her hand, unlike the male-centric daggers she is used to. Churdy smiles in relief at her satisfaction, prompting Rosalind to curiously ask when he first started working on the weapon. Her father sheepishly admits he started it about 3.5 years ago, leaving Rosalind shocked by how long ago he began crafting it for her. He explains that they discovered the mineral 5 years ago, frantically assuring her that the delay was due to the temperamental metal, not his incompetence. Rosalind wonders if the dagger from her previous timeline was originally meant for her as well, before telling herself not to get her hopes up. Her father clears his throat, interrupting her deep thoughts, and Rosalind looks up to ask him what is on his mind. Churdy struggles with his nervousness, remembering the painful sight of Rosalind bleeding from thorn scratches in the past. He recalls with bitter regret how his past cowardice and lack of clear communication only ended up deeply hurting his daughter. Determined not to repeat his past mistakes, Churdy steps forward with absolute resolve in his eyes. Churdy looks directly at Rosalind, his expression full of passionate determination to finally speak his true feelings. Churdy confesses that from the moment he first discovered the unique mineral, his only thought was to craft something special to give to her. With a sincere and flushed face, he admits that even if he struggled to give it to her, he always intended for the very first piece to be hers. Rosalind's heart trembles as she gently strokes the blade, realizing his long and grueling efforts were entirely for her sake from the very beginning. A close-up of Rosalind's widened red eyes captures her profound shock and emotional realization of her father's genuine love. She looks closely at the bottom of the handle, discovering her nickname Rose elegantly engraved onto the metal. Seeing her nickname, Rosalind holds the precious dagger close to her chest, her expression softening with deep emotion. Rosalind realizes that Lady Carmel must have stolen this very dagger from Churdy in her past life to claim it as her own. Smiling warmly, Rosalind thanks her father, deeply relieved that the weapon has finally found its rightful owner in this timeline. Overwhelmed with happiness at her rare, gentle smile, her father's eyes fill with tears of joy as he whispers her name. Churdy proudly shares his plan to start a business with this technology, excited to gather skilled technicians and expand the workshop. To his surprise, Rosalind calmly asks him to hold off on hiring any new technicians for the time being. Churdy explains that stalling might be difficult, as he spent a substantial portion of the duchy's research funds and needs to show results quickly. Rosalind warns that the revolutionary technology might leak, but Churdy reassures her that the technicians he has in mind are loyal, long-time Bellion associates. While Churdy trusts them, Rosalind's gaze turns sharp as she recalls that these same technicians easily betrayed their family to Maroxa in her past life. She realizes that even though they eliminated Carmel, the remaining small fry within the duchy could still plot a devastating betrayal. Rosalind advises him to consult grandfather and take things slow, reassuring him that the mine her grandfather bought will soon yield a massive profit. Looking straight at her father, Rosalind asks him to trust her and wait just a little longer. Her father is completely overwhelmed with excitement and joy, thrilled that his daughter is directly asking him for a favor. Powerless against his beloved daughter's request, Churdy gladly agrees to hold off on hiring the technicians as long as he can. Rosalind rewards him with a dazzling smile of gratitude, while privately formulating her strategic plans regarding the Smiths. Her inner thoughts reveal her plan to personally recruit highly skilled, trustworthy technicians directly from Coluta once her business there is done. The story transitions to the title card of Chapter 15, showing a carriage traveling through a serene, starry forest at night. 3 days before leaving for Coluta, Rosalind sits quietly inside her carriage holding a mask, knowing all her preparations are complete. She notes that while the Empire's people look down on Coluta, in her past life they were a formidable foe capable of waging war. Determined to ensure smooth negotiations, Rosalind holds on to her secret cards, confident that she is fully prepared. Knowing of a rather good card, Rosalind arrives at a mysterious building where a masked host welcomes them, saying, "Welcome to our auction house." Addressing her as Lady Redcat, the host ushers her into the secret underground market known as the Anthill. The host burns a ticket with a candle, verifying her entry, before politely inviting her to step inside. Strict rules govern entry. No weapons are allowed, only one accompanying guard is permitted, and guests must wear the mask provided by the host. But inside this seemingly abandoned place, a massive hatch in the stone floor swings open to reveal a hidden passage. A heavy set of doors opens, revealing a dark, smoky passageway leading deep underground. The host guides them down the stone steps, politely saying, "Now this way, please." The Anthill is a notorious black market auction house where everything from precious gems to rare creatures, beastmen, and humans are bought and sold. Run by a member of Maroxa, the auction house is a key point organization, though investigating it alone won't lead directly to Maroxa's ultimate leader. Knowing the leader isn't her target today, Rosalind walks down as the host asks if there is a specific item she is searching for. With a cold, unwavering gaze, Rosalind replies simply, "A slave." The host smiles and tells her she has chosen a perfect day, as they have just received a large shipment of premium quality merchandise. Heavy iron doors creak open to reveal the holding cells as the host invites her to find the perfect item. The holding area is filled with rows of iron cages, echoing with the desperate screams and clanking chains of the newly arrived captives. The host callously laughs at the captives' cries, remarking on the lively voices of today's new arrivals. Rosalind finds the treatment of humans as mere livestock sickening, even as the host casually asks if she has a preferred age or gender in mind. Rosalind specifies she is looking for a teenage male, but stops in her tracks as a strange golden light suddenly catches her attention. Halting the host, Rosalind points toward a specific cage and says, "Wait, I would like to take a look at this one." Looking at the captive boy, Rosalind realizes she has successfully found her target, the second prince of Coluta. The host looks back in surprise as Rosalind insists on inspecting the silver-haired boy in the cage. Staring at the curled-up boy, Rosalind confirms to herself that this captive is indeed the sole reason she came to the Anthill. She notes the unmistakable traits of the Kaluta ruling class: vivid green eyes, silver hair, and a distinct red tattoo marking his face. Staring directly at her with striking green eyes, the boy is none other than the captured second prince of Kaluta. Impressed, the host praises Rosalind's keen eye for immediately recognizing a member of the rare Kaluta tribe. The host warns that because these barbarians are wild by nature, capturing them was an incredibly expensive endeavor. Unfazed by the host's warnings, Rosalind gets straight to the point, asking, "So, how much is he?" The host quotes an astronomical price of 698.5 million oolong, far exceeding the typical slave price of 100 to 200 million. Rosalind inwardly fumes at the blatant ripoff, determined not to let them treat her like a pushover even if she isn't spending her own money. With absolute confidence, Rosalind crosses her arms and firmly counters 400 million. When the host tries to argue that a tamed Kaluta makes the ultimate slave, Rosalind instantly cuts him off, commanding, "Enough." She warns him to stop playing games, asking if he is looking down on her or trying to make a fool out of her. Her crimson eyes flare with a terrifying, threatening aura as she warns him to be prepared for the consequences. Clearly intimidated by her overwhelming presence, the host breaks a sweat and nervously stammers a lower offer of 500 million. As the host sweats under Rosalind's pressure, the distinct sound of approaching footsteps echoes through the quiet chamber. A tall man wearing a gray wolf mask and displaying striking green eyes suddenly walks up, declaring, "I will buy that child for 500 million. Rosalind observes that the newcomer is completely covered from head to toe to hide his skin color. Realizing the newcomer is also from the Kaluta tribe, Rosalind finds it troublesome since she wanted to secure the boy and leave before running into them. Rosalind coldly calls him out for rudely interrupting her negotiation, but the man amusement-filled replies that he did so precisely because it is a negotiation. The wolf-masked man arrogantly flips a coin, pointing out that he can easily offer a much higher price. Rosalind berates him as a novice, explaining that in the VIP room, it is customary to yield to the first person who expressed interest. Rosalind delivers a sharp insult, comparing his aggressive behavior to a mindless dog and mocking how perfectly his mask suits his nature. Stunned by her biting words, the wolf-masked man takes a step back, muttering in disbelief at her insult. Inwardly, Rosalind notes that she didn't want to offend the people of Sanshiro, who were among her few true friends in her past life. However, for the sake of her grand plans, she has no choice but to proceed, hoping Sanshiro will understand her true intentions. Rosalind turns to the flabbergasted guide and casually asks, "Tell me, guide, how much does an adult Kaluta tribe member go for?" The guide explains that adult members are extremely rare, hard to tame, and start at a bid of at least 1 billion. Rosalind smirks behind her mask, softly murmuring, "Is that so? Such a rare find." Rosalind points directly at the wolf-masked stranger, boldly declaring, "Is standing right in front of us." Furious at her accusation, the man tightly grips his cane, growling about a slip of a girl spouting complete nonsense. As the man threatens to teach her a lesson to shut her up, Rosalind remains completely calm, questioning if she is really speaking nonsense. With a sharp, unwavering gaze, Rosalind points out that the stranger's vivid green eyes look exactly like those of the captured Kaluta child, demanding that he remove his gloves if he has nothing to hide. Rosalind warns the traveler that his skin color will easily reveal whether he belongs to the Kaluta tribe, leaving him visibly shaken and whispering in alarm. Following Rosalind's suggestion, the masked auction house guide politely approaches the traveler and requests that he remove his gloves to verify his identity. Enraged, the traveler shouts at them for treating a VIP so poorly, while his guard draws his sword to stop the guide from taking another step closer. Annoyed by the commotion, Rosalind coldly intervenes, asking what all the noise is about and warning them that they are disturbing the other guests. Suddenly, a tall official wearing a red deer antler mask appears behind them without a sound, prompting the guard to defensively step back in utter shock. The red-masked official calmly gestures for silence, explaining that they only need to verify his skin color and that making a scene only makes them look more suspicious. The official promises full compensation for their rudeness once verified, before politely asking the guest to remove his gloves and show his skin. Observing the situation, Rosalind recognizes the red-masked man as a powerful and key official of the underground auction house. She realizes the traveler has nowhere left to hide, identifying him as Jambaga, the treacherous great prince of Kaluta. Rosalind recalls that in her past life, Jambaga was a jealous coward who sneaked into the empire to eliminate his nephew, the second prince. By killing the prince and framing the empire, Jambaga successfully lit the flames of war, resulting in the deaths of both the king of Kaluta and the emperor. Looking back at the warm memories of her father and allies, Rosalind realizes she now has far too much to protect in this current life. Standing tall with unwavering resolve, Rosalind firmly declares that she will refuse to let war break out under any circumstances. To stop the impending war, Rosalind is determined to rescue the prince and gain the ultimate upper hand in negotiations with Kaluta. Met with silence, the red-masked official coldly concludes that the guest's lack of answer means he is of the same kind as the merchandise they sell. Panicking, the guest's guard draws his sword and declares that he will clear a path of escape for his master. The guard urges his master to run for the exit, while the red-masked official stands completely unfazed by their desperate attempt to escape. The official notes with a chill in his voice that he cannot simply stand by and let them cause such a disruptive scene. A sinister, sharp-toothed smile spreads across the official's face as dark, ominous magic begins to gather around him. Before the guard can react, a massive swirl of dark, shadowy energy erupts from the ground and engulfs him completely. The guard screams in agony as the terrifying black abyss wraps tightly around his body, rendering him completely powerless. Both the guard and Prince Jambaga are lifted into the air, completely encased in spheres of swirling, dark shadow magic. Straining against the suffocating shadow, Jambaga furiously demands to be let go, boasting about his royal status. The official laughs in amusement at Jambaga's raging threats, finding the prospect of taming such a wild beast highly entertaining. Feeling that the prince is far too loud, the official clenches his fist to tighten the dark shadows and silence his screams. Swirling spheres vanish into a tiny black spot on the floor, leaving the room quiet as Rosalind and the guide watch the display of power. Walking back over to Rosalind, the official warmly thanks her, noting that they have secured 2 highly valuable pieces of merchandise because of her. Pleased with the outcome, the red-masked official stands before Rosalind and offers to reward her with whatever she desires. Recognizing his immense power as a high-level abyss user, Rosalind smiles behind her mask, eagerly preparing to make a demanding request. The official politely reiterates his gratitude for her help in acquiring 2 incredibly valuable assets for the auction house. Seeing an opportunity to exploit a reward from an abyss user of his caliber, Rosalind decides to make a bold offer. Rosalind points a gloved hand toward the iron cage holding the young prince as well as the 2 newly captured intruders. With absolute confidence, she demands that he hand over all 3 of them to her in exchange for 500 million oolong. The official is stunned and asks if she is joking, but Rosalind calmly pulls out a document, assuring him that she is entirely serious. To seal the deal, Rosalind slides a banknote forward, offering to pay an extra 100 million as a generous finder's fee. The official's eyes widen in shock as he inspects the banknote, recognizing the prestigious Wilbur family seal worth 1 billion. Highly amused by her offering a service fee, the official smiles and playfully suggests that she might want to spend a bit more. When he offers to personally escort her from now on, Rosalind flatly rejects him, saying his smug attitude is not her type. She coldly tells him to take the money and leave, leaving the official completely speechless and hilariously offended by being rejected. A beautiful close-up captures Rosalind's red eyes behind her elegant cat mask as white petals drift softly around her. In her thoughts, Rosalind notes that she strongly dislikes arrogant, cocky men and vastly prefers those who are gentle and polite. She fondly imagines Arma's sweet, warm smile and gentle demeanor, thinking someone like him would be much more to her liking. The red-masked official stands in silence, staring at her as he processes her blunt rejection. He complains that she is sending mixed signals and tells her to just pick one preference, leaving Rosalind thoroughly confused. Letting it go, the official counters by offering all 3 captives for 1 billion, suggesting she throw in a little extra for that amount. Rosalind decides that the highly coveted rose diamond jewelry set from the auction would make the perfect bonus. Exasperated, the official facepalms and laughs, accusing her of deliberately targeting those gems because she knows they are worth 500 million. The official reveals he knows her true identity, calling her a swindler princess, while Rosalind remarks on the incredible reach of his information guild. Amused by her sharp tongue and quick wit, the official smirks and replies that it is a true honor to be recognized by such a clever swindler. The red-masked official leans in very close to Rosalind's face, whispering a tempting proposal to gain her favor. Then, how about this offer? I will give you everything you want for free. Holding Rosalind's hand gently, the red-masked official tries to charm her as dark petals drift around them. If you become my queen, that is. Rosalind remains completely silent and still behind her elegant cat mask, staring back at the official with an unreadable expression. rejects his touch completely, Rosalind firmly slaps a banknote directly onto the official's red mask to push him away. Let's just make it 1.5 billion and keep your hands to yourself. The official stands frozen in shock as the banknote slides comically down his face while Rosalind calmly walks away. Hey, I'll let your rudeness slide just this once. Touching his mask in disbelief, the official sighs in defeat, realizing his attempt to flirt with her backfired completely. She said she liked this type at first, so I tried it. But looking at her reaction, does she actually hate men like this? Seriously, I have no idea how to handle her. Under the brilliant light of a full moon in the night sky, Rosalind exits the secret building and heads back into the forest. What a strange place, filled with strange people. Rosalind climbs into her carriage, feeling relieved but slightly mourning the massive price she paid to secure the captives. It's a relief everything was settled smoothly, though it ended up costing me 1.5 billion. Behind her, the red-masked official is shown crying comically while holding her banknote, muttering, "What a shame." Rosalind walks over to her carriage, eager to check on the young captive prince curled up inside under a blanket. Now then, shall I go comfort our precious prince, who must be trembling with fear? The young Kaluta prince slowly turns his head, revealing his vibrant green eyes and facial markings, staring at her with quiet hostility. "Hello." Rosalind notices the intense, fiery gaze in the young prince's eyes, realizing he is filled with anger rather than fear. Actually, rather than fear, he seems to be trembling with rage. He looks like he'd tear me apart the moment he gets a chance. He may be young, but he certainly has the fierce spirit of a Kaluta. It's a relief he's still wearing the restraint tool. Rosalind sits down opposite the young prince inside the carriage, speaking to him in a soft, reassuring voice. "Shall we talk for a moment before we leave? My name is Rosalind Bellion." She offers him warm words and comfort, asking if he is all right after his ordeal. "You can call me Rosalind, or you can just call me Nuna. Are you hurt anywhere? Are you hungry or cold?" Rosalind calmly informs him about her upcoming plans to travel to his homeland. "In a few days, I'll be heading to Kaluta with the delegation." When Rosalind offers to return him to his home, the young prince suddenly turns on her with a furious and defensive expression. "I'm planning to take you with me then. What do you think? There is a limit to how much you can mock me." The prince stands up in anger, raising his chained wrists and shouting at Rosalind for mocking him. "How dare you try to deceive me with such words?" He continues to yell, letting the blanket drop from his shoulders as he accuses her of hypocrisy. "What are you trying to gain by deceiving me with this hypocrisy?" He proudly displays his chained hands, declaring his loyalty to his tribe and warning her that he won't be easily fooled. "I am a proud member of the Great Kaluta. I won't be fooled by your glib tongue." In response, Rosalind calmly reaches up and removes her mask, revealing her stunning white hair and beautiful red eyes to the boy. "I won't." Seeing her true, breathtaking face for the first time, the young prince blushes deeply and falls completely silent in shock. Rosalind smiles with absolute confidence, fully aware of how deeply the Kaluta people appreciate beauty. "Oh, I heard the Kaluta people place a high value on beauty. Do you like my face?" She leans in and gently takes hold of his blanket, teasing him for his aggressive behavior. "I should use it to my advantage then. I see you haven't learned how to treat a lady yet." Rosalind wraps the blanket back around his shoulders, teasing him about his eagerness to return home, which makes him blush even more. "Or do you just not want to go back home?" "Who said that?" Rosalind gently holds out her gloved hand, politely requesting his hands. "Right, then give me your hands for a second." With a sharp metallic click, Rosalind quickly unlocks and removes the heavy iron shackles from his wrists, leaving him completely stunned. "Huh?" The young prince looks down at his freed hands in utter disbelief, wondering why she would release him so easily. She's removing the restraint tool. Why? Rosalind smiles warmly and places the shackles aside, assuring him that she has no intention of keeping him as a captive. "Of course I should. I didn't buy you to be my slave." She tells him that he deserves to return home as a free person, leaving him deeply moved and speechless. "You're not a criminal, so you shouldn't go home wearing a restraint tool." Ugh. Holding his hands together, the prince looks down, wondering why such a fragile-looking imperial woman would take such a massive risk. Even so, she looks fragile even among the weak people of the empire. What is she thinking? What if I attack her? In a cute chibi illustration, Rosalind and the young prince agree to sit down and talk peacefully. "Now, why don't we sit down and talk calmly?" "Fine." The young prince sits down wrapped in his blanket, questioning her physical strength and warning her that she looks too weak for the journey. You said you were going with the delegation, right? Is the Empire so short on people that they have to send someone as weak as you? You'll suffer a physical breakdown on the way. Rosalind playfully plays the victim, teasing him for yelling at a helpless lady and making him blush in embarrassment. But it was fine for you to jump up and yell at a defenseless woman? That was... Feeling incredibly guilty and flustered, the young prince turns his head away and softly apologizes for his outburst. I'm truly sorry. I was in the wrong. My behavior was unacceptable. He opens up and explains the reason for his extreme caution, recalling how he was betrayed and sold into captivity. I was deceived by someone, and when I finally came to, I had ended up here. So I suspected that you were trying to trick and deceive me too. Set against a beautiful background of pink flowers, the boy admits that he still harbors some doubts. Of course I still don't fully trust you. He looks at her, hoping that her role in the imperial delegation means she is friendly toward his tribe. Well, since you're part of the delegation, perhaps you're one of the few in the Empire friendly toward Kaluta. The boy wonders if she rescued him for political leverage, while Rosalind smiles brightly and accepts his apology. Did saving me have something to do with the delegation's work? All right, I accept your apology. The young prince blushes and turns away, suspicious of her sweet smiles but remaining confident that he can defend himself if necessary. Why does she keep smiling like that? Does she do that because she knows she's pretty? If she's lying, I can just use force and run away. Observing his expressive face, Rosalind can't help but find his transparent thoughts highly amusing. I wonder if he's thinking something like that. Rosalind watches him blushing, finding it cute how easily he reveals his emotions despite his dangerous heritage. He's just a child, so his face is an open book. Anyway, weak. Rosalind reflects on the legendary combat abilities of the Kaluta, a tribe of superhuman warriors. How long has it been since someone other than my family called me weak? Of course, to a Kaluta, I would look that way. The Kaluta, a dangerous ethnic minority with superhuman martial prowess, it is said that a single member possesses the strength of 100 soldiers. Even a child can apparently kill an adult male of the Empire. She recalls a famous historical story demonstrating the devastating wrath of the Kaluta king when his daughter was kidnapped, but she notes their strong sense of honor. There is a famous story of a small kingdom that once committed the abduction of the Kaluta king's daughter. The king himself led a few guards and completely annihilated them. Yet they are not heartless barbarians who lack a sense of duty. If I return their son along with his kidnapper, Rosalind smiles to herself, planning to use this rescue to build strong ties and goodwill with the powerful tribe. They will surely show me goodwill. It wouldn't hurt to do some groundwork beforehand. Fortunately, I seem to have won him over. The young prince blushes and offers to have his father repay her purchase price and a service fee once they safely arrive. If what you say is true and you really take me back to Kaluta, I will tell my father to repay you for my price plus a service fee. Rosalind laughs softly and gently declines his offer of financial repayment. I don't need that. What? But Rosalind points a gloved finger directly at his face, preparing to make a clear demand. Instead, let's make one thing clear. The prince immediately tenses up, his eyes widening as he suspects she is about to demand something far more difficult. I knew it. She wants something after all. He clenches his fist in silent frustration, bracing himself to hear her true demands. But let's make one thing clear. I knew you wanted something. The prince wonders if she has uncovered his royal lineage and plans to exploit him to make demands on his tribe. If it's not money, then what is it? Does she know I'm a prince? If she's trying to use this to make unreasonable demands on Kaluta? Rosalind smiles warmly, explaining that establishing an equal partnership is crucial for their future relationship. What do you mean, it? Standing on equal footing with a future partner is incredibly important. Besides, how you treat me as a prince will influence how other Kalutans treat me. The proud and powerful people of the Kaluta tribe possess superhuman physical abilities, with even their children harboring the strength of multiple adult imperial soldiers. Batard defiantly declares that he won't show respect to anyone weaker than him, but Rosalind calmly points out that she is the one who saved him. Flustered and blushing deeply, the young Kaluta prince stammers in embarrassment, unable to find a quick retort.
Batard defensively claims he was only captured because the kidnappers used dirty tricks, and Rosalind gently agrees with him.
Rosalind smiles warmly, acknowledging the formidable reputation of the Kalutans, which makes the young prince realize that she's being entirely sincere. Looking at Rosalind's beautiful and composed figure, Batard thinks to himself that despite his prejudice against imperial people, she seems like the perfect bride. Batard curiously asks Rosalind for her age, and she replies that she is 17 before asking him the same question. Impressed by her capability and responsibility, the young prince reveals his name is Batard and that he is 12 years old. Rosalind compliments his name, and Batard mentions that he has an older brother and an older sister. Batard begins to excitedly describe his 17-year-old brother, Bayan, boasting about his intelligence, combat instincts, and handsome appearance. When Rosalind asks why he is suddenly sharing so much about his brother, a blushing Batard mutters that he thought it might be helpful since they share the same tastes. Pointing a finger downward, Batard loudly declares that if respect is what she wants, he will make a special exception just for her. Batard suddenly remembers his manners, realizing that he shouldn't be pointing fingers at a lady. Stuttering, Batard addresses her as ma'am instead, leaving them both looking at each other in comical confusion. Standing in a rigid, polite posture, Batard asks if she is truly taking him back to Kaluta, while Rosalind is amused by his sudden change in attitude. Appreciating his earnest effort to show respect, Rosalind smiles warmly and assures him that she is telling the truth. Deeply moved, Batard bows his head and sincerely thanks her for rescuing him, promising to repay the immense favor. Rosalind smiles and gently extends her gloved hand, saying she will hold him to his promise and hopes they can get along. Batard happily grasps her hand, flashing a bright, friendly smile that confirms he is completely warmed up to her. Rosalind reflects on how establishing trade between Kaluta and her duchy, independent of the imperial family, will be a massive benefit, with Batard's safety serving as the cornerstone. Rosalind recalls her past life, remembering the terrible period when her duchy was placed in grave danger by Carmel. She remembers with deep regret how coldly she rejected her uncle Aegis's desperate pleas for help, and resolves to remove that lingering thorn in this life. In the pouring rain, the grand and imposing estate of the Wilbard Marquisate stands under a dark, stormy sky. Inside the study, a butler informs his lord that a letter and a package have arrived from young Lady Rosalind Bellion. Surprised by the unexpected arrival, the lord takes the letter first to read its contents. He opens a beautiful jewelry box containing a magnificent pearl necklace, reading Rosalind's letter where she playfully explains that she spent his money on a gift for his wife on his behalf. The lord smiles warmly, touched by Rosalind's clever gesture and the beautifully thoughtful gift. He reflects on the amount spent and her previous words, easily piecing together exactly what transpired. Leaning against his desk, the lord smiles to himself, noting how remarkably similar Rosalind's way of thinking is to his own. He smiles widely, reminiscing about how their clashing personalities always made their interactions incredibly entertaining. He looks back on his past impressions, remembering how Rosalind did not initially catch his attention. He recalls a past banquet where a blonde noblewoman mockingly apologized to a humiliated Rosalind, while the surrounding crowd snickered. In his memory, Rosalind tripped and fell in front of the snickering crowd, crying out in shock and embarrassment. He remembers watching the scene with disdain, thinking to himself how vulgar and foolish the entire display was. He admits that he used to view her as just another brainless noble, but everything changed completely after she left the ducal manor and transformed through her trials. She began gathering valuable business secrets from various noble families and selling them to their direct rivals. She meticulously analyzed the complex web of relationships among the nobility, selectively selling information to ensure she avoided detection. Knowing that the nobles would want to keep their dealings with an exiled princess a strict secret, she used their own psychology to successfully hide her identity. His memory flashes to a moment when a panicked messenger rushed into his room shouting that they had a major problem. The messenger reported that all their prospective business partners had signed with Lutech County instead, dealing a massive blow to his family's project and making him feel like a fool robbed in broad daylight. Though initially furious and determined to track down the culprit, the meticulous planning behind the scheme piqued his curiosity, leading him to investigate further. Upon discovering that the brilliant mind behind the operation was none other than Rosalind Bellion, he couldn't help but laugh out loud at the irony. Returning to the present, he smiles down at the jewelry box, admiring Rosalind's excellent taste and acknowledging that any woman would love the necklace. He closes the jewelry box, deciding that he will use this thoughtful gift as a perfect opportunity to speak with his wife. Carrying the gift, he approaches his wife's private quarters and knocks gently on her door. Inside the room, a delicate hand sets down a freshly brewed cup of rose tea on the table. The elegant and beautiful Selina Wilbred, Marchioness of Wilbred, sits gracefully in her chair and bids him to enter. Selina looks up in surprise, her blue eyes widening slightly as she sees her husband enter. Holding the gold box under his arm, the Marquis politely enters the room, apologizing for the sudden intrusion. Selina asks what brings him to her quarters at this hour, and he reminds her that he had asked her to make time for afternoon tea. Entering his wife's quarters, the Marquis places the ornate gold jewelry box on the table and gently notes that she didn't wait for him. "Yet, I see you've already started without me." The Marquis attempts to converse warmly, but Selina stands with her back to him, cold and completely uninterested in pleasantries. "If you had told me, I would have matched your schedule." "I have no desire to make small talk." Turning around sharply with a glare, Selina gets straight to the point and asks the question she has been waiting to ask. "When will you grant me a divorce?" A tense silence fills the room as a slight smile plays on the Marquis's lips while he softly repeats her sudden, heavy demand. "A divorce?"